United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, I just pray and thank you for this day you've given us today. I pray and thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to serve this great city. I pray that you'll continue to have your hand upon the recent victims of the tornadoes and the floods and continue to heal those folks. And Lord, I just pray that you'll be with us tonight as we move forward with items before us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mike. All right, I'd like to again welcome you to this regular meeting of the Springdale City Council. This is Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. We do have large print agendas, I think. Do we have any up there? Okay, Colby's got them there by the podium, if that would help anyone. And so I'll call the meeting to order, and next we'll move to item 3, which is the roll call, and our city clerk treasurer, Denise Pierce.
Amir Sprouse.
Here.
Brian Powell.
Here.
Amelia Williams.
Here.
Jeff Watson.
Here.
Mike Overton.
Here.
Mike Lawson.
Here.
Kevin Flores.
Here.
Randall Harriman.
Here.
Mark Fujarus.
Here.
Ernest Cape.
Here.
All right, thank you. Everyone's here and accounted for. Item 5 on our agenda is that's the portion of each meeting that the council sets aside to hear comments from our residents. If we have residents that would like to address the council, please go to the podium, clearly state your name and address. We ask that you keep your comments brief, no more than 3 minutes or so. And please understand that the council won't be taking action on anything that you have to say tonight. Is there anyone that would like to address the council concerning an item that is not already on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to items.
Mayor,
Whoop.
I'd like to, for us to consider a change of order of the
Okay.
agenda to look at item number 16.
All right.
See if that's possible to move that one forward. Say that right after item number 11. So I make that motion
After 11 or after 10?
after 11.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second to make that change in the order of the agenda.
Mayor,
Yes.
so we're making this for a carpetbagger who's suckled at the large ass of the city of Springdale for decades.
Well,
And who wants to forego.
that's the only reason I made the motion is so you could make comments on
Well,
it.
good. He wants to forego the only opportunity he has for a decent civics lesson by sitting through this council to get educated. That's an affront to the citizenry of Springdale.
Any other comments? We do have a motion and a second. Okay, Denise.
Fujarus. He said yes. Powell.
Yes.
Williams. Yes. Watson.
Yes.
Overton.
No.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Flores.
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman.
Yes, ma'am.
Carry 7-1, it'll be moved from item 16 to after item 11. I guess we'll make it item 11B, which I think moves us into item number 6, which is a public hearing on this item. The item that was just moved up on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of water and sewer revenue bonds to finance a sewer project, and the state statute requires that before you take action on that ordinance, that a public hearing be conducted and the city clerk publish notice of the public hearing as required by statute. So is there anyone here who would like to comment on this ordinance? Not, I will close the public hearing and we'll take the item up after item number 11.
All right, thank you. Item 7, approval of minutes. Council, you've had an opportunity to look over those minutes. If there are no changes or additions, I'd entertain a motion to approve them as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, item 8 is procedural motions. What's your pleasure, council?
I'll move for A and B.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for A and B. Roll call, please.
Powell.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Watson.
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Flores.
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman.
Yes, ma'am.
Fujarus.
Yes.
Carries 8-0.
All right, thank you. Item 9, I'd like to ask Ron Finley and Shane with you, Ron? Yes, sir. Okay, I'll meet y'all at the podium. We're going to start doing something once a month at council meetings. We have, as you know, a great bunch of employees, and sometimes they go above and beyond, and many times we don't know about it, don't have an opportunity to recognize them and thank them for that. And so we think we're going to take one department each month at the second council meeting of each month, and recognize someone that they bring forward for just going kind of above and beyond in their service to our residents. So I'm going to let Ron introduce and kind of tell the story behind our first recipient.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. Thank you for doing this. I can tell you right now, code enforcement is a difficult job for my staff. You know, when you're telling somebody to cut their grass, to clean up beside their house, it's difficult. Like I told the mayor this morning, you know, bad news travels quicker than good news. And my staff, I will say, I'm very proud and blessed to have the staff that I've had. I've had most of them for, you know, this is my 5th year starting. Most of them's been here 5. I got 4 that's been here 5. The rest has been here, you know, about 2. Officer Pegram, he's used to helping people. He's helped people for 28 years. We had a situation probably about the middle of April that happened. He came to me. We talked about it. Sometimes timing is not everything. It's not, you know, we're not where we're supposed to be, and at that time, and unfortunately, we had a situation, without going into too much detail, where Officer Pegram went above and beyond to help a citizen, and I'm very proud of what he done and what my staff continues to do to help the citizens of Springdale, whether, you know, going after hours to help an elderly person, weed eat, you know, behind their fence line. You know, everybody put money in my department together to buy a battery for an elderly lady that can't afford a battery for a riding lawnmower. So I'm very appreciative of Officer Pegram of what he's done, because he did go above and beyond. So thank you very much. I'm glad to have him as part of my staff.
Well, when you said you don't go into detail, you really don't. So I know detail, but I figure I better not go into it. And I know Shane was not, you know, he didn't do what he did to be up here. And so I appreciate it, Shane. And here's a little gift from the city, just thanking you for helping our residents. Okay? Thank you, sir. Thanks. All right. We'll move on now to item 10, or no?
10.
Yeah, item 10. We have, I'll go ahead and read it. A resolution making a reappointment to the Advertising and Promotion Commission of the City of Springdale. This would reappoint Rick Culver to another term on our A&P Commission.
Move resolution forward.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Any other questions or comments? Anyone? All right, Denise?
Williams. Yes. Watson.
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Flores.
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman.
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus.
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Carries 8-0.
All right, thank you, and thanks to Rick for his willingness to continue to serve. We are at item 11. This is a resolution, I'll go ahead and read it, a resolution authorizing the sale of property to Kasim Ventures LLC. I asked to have this put back on the agenda. We had 3 council members missing from the committee meeting. This was not forwarded by committee. This is something that I wanted to bring back And I think it's important that that everyone get a chance to weigh in on this. And this is Omar is on Zoom. He came to me quite a while back, actually, a few months ago, and asked if the city would have any interest in selling the property that we have across from the Jones Center, across Emma Avenue, on the south side of Emma Avenue, just west of the airport. I said we may have an interest if we'll get it appraised and you can make an offer, and if it's something that I think is worth considering, I'll be happy to take it to council. So that's why we are where we are. The property appraised for $465,000. I think the city bought that property back in 17 or 18. I think we've got I think some over 300 in it, and I think that includes, I'm not sure, Ernest, do you have all those figures? Because I think that includes tearing the houses down too.
I think it was 335, I think, if I
Okay.
remember correctly.
Okay, so
Low threes.
since this was a full value offer from Omar for what the property appraised for, I thought it was my duty to bring it to the council. I think Omar has some great plans for the property. I won't go into those. He's welcome to if he wants. I do want to be sure we understand too, and make sure Omar's clear on this too. The appraisal did not take into consideration the 60-foot right-of-way easement that would be run along the east side of the property. So he's not only offered full appraisal, but he's also offered to donate that 60-foot right-of-way for that easement, and still pay full appraised value. Omar, I got one question for you before we get started. The question came up at committee. I think it was Jeff that asked it, I'm not sure, about future improvements to Emma Avenue. And I had our engineering department, had Ryan look at that today, and he gave us his best idea at what the right-of-way would look like along Emma Avenue. And I'm hitting you with this cold, so I know it's not really fair, but this could all be part of the due diligence also if the council moves this forward. But I think it's about the right-of-way on the east end of the property is about 3 feet of additional right-of-way would be needed, and on the west end would be about 9 feet. So that's it. That's when the improvements to Emma are being done. So I wanted to give you that and just let you think on that, and if you have any initial thoughts about how you would, what you would consider on that right-of-way, if the council were to move forward with this, then.
Yeah, I think can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you barely. Try that again.
Okay. Is this any better? I'm using my earbuds.
Okay. Go ahead and say what you want to say.
I'd probably just say, with going in blind, my response is just as if it's good for the downtown development, then it's good for our project. So I'm all in favor for making sure that this happens as we need it to.
Hey, Omar, can you call my cell phone? Or do you want to call that? Okay. If you would call
Is
it
this any better?
voice better, that would be better.
Is this
We're
better?
not understanding what you're saying.
Okay. Let's see. Is this any better? Can you hear me?
Not much. Okay.
Hello.
Luis is working on it. Give us just a minute.
This is Luis from IT. So The voice is just cutting in and out. If you can call in for the audio instead of using the internet,
Okay,
just
dial in.
yeah, that'll help for sure.
Okay. Let's see.
It seems like you have another connection active.
Yeah,
There's
I'm using
Omar.
my
You may wanna. You probably can use this
cell
one.
phone too.
Yeah, if we need to lose the video, that's fine.
So you know, Zoom, you have the option.
Okay.
Dial in.
Is he on?
He's, he's trying to dial in.
Okay.
Hey, Mark, do you mind just interacting with me for testing purposes? Councilman Mark,
Okay,
you doing all right?
yes, thank you.
All right.
We could.
Mayor, I'm not sure why, but he was coming across perfectly fine to me.
Luis, would it be better if we moved on and came back to this? If the council would be willing to do that, and you could get Omar, is that all right with the council?
Let's pull it up after planning commission.
After planning commission?
Mhm.
Okay, you work with Omar on the phone, and then we'll go after the planning commission things are forwarded. Thank you all for being patient with that. All right. Well, Shep, I believe it's you.
Mayor, council members, the ordinance before you tonight has to do with wastewater. It's gonna, this is kind of technical, but it's the decommission and remediation of wastewater treatment facilities in the territory formerly known as Bethel Heights, and the acquisition and construction of approximately 6,000 linear feet of sanitary gravity sewer main to alter existing flows from the former Bethel Heights area to the Springdale Water and Sewer System's wastewater collection system. That's the purpose of the financing. The financing is being done through the state of Arkansas, through two agencies, the Arkansas Natural Resource Commission, which is their program. The financing arm is the Arkansas Development Finance Authority. There being two bonds issued. One is for $1 million, 0% interest, and is going to be forgiven. And the way that works is these are not bonds where the full purchase price is paid at the closing. It's a drawdown like a construction loan. So as each draw is made, if the utility is in compliance with the program guidelines, then the loan is forgiven, or that draw is forgiven. So it's called principal forgiveness. The second loan is not, it's repayable. It's also at 0% interest, and that amount is $2,054,083. And it pays off in 2034. So it's a 12-year financing, 0%. And the bonds, these two bonds are payable solely by water and sewer revenues. So it's not a general obligation of the city or a bond that would be paid from any revenues other than the water and sewer system. Water and Sewer Commission is responsible for the project, and will be making the bond payments on behalf of the city.
Okay.
That's a summary. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Shep, you said both are zero interest?
Yes, sir.
Well, I understood, I guess I misunderstood.
Well, I'm sorry.
One and a
There's a
half,
servicing fee on
Right.
one of 1%.
oh,
A 1% servicing fee.
oh,
That
that's right.
goes for
You gotta
their
be paid, I
program.
understand.
Pardon?
You have to be paid, I understand, you get your one and a half, but. No, I understood that we had, at the committee meeting, I thought I understood that it was actually the reverse of what you said. I thought it was like a grant for the 2 million, and then the actual bond where the drawdown was gonna be on the 1 million, but I
Yeah,
guess.
it's, the forgiveness is $1 million. So
Okay, so it's not the 2, it's the 1.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But it's the origination fee is on the 2 mil. There's no origination fee on the 1 mil drawdown.
That's correct.
While we've got a break here, let me go ahead and read the ordinance. An ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of water and sewer revenue bonds, Series 2022B and Series 2022C, to finance a sewer project, providing for the payment of the principal and interest on the bonds, prescribing other matters related thereto, and declaring an emergency.
Move the ordinance be passed and approved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there other questions or comments? Anyone in the room? Okay, Denise?
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Flores,
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman,
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus,
Yes.
Howe,
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Move the emergency clause be adopted.
Second.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Flores,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Harriman,
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus,
Yes.
Howe,
Yes.
Williams. Watson,
Yes.
Both the ordinance emergency clause carry 8-0.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shep. All right, item 12, Planning Commission report and recommendations by Patsy Christie, Director of Planning and Community Development.
Can we get the slides back up, guys? The first item is a request to rezone .43 acres located at 5469 Watkins Avenue. The request is to rezone the property from Agricultural District A1 to Thoroughfare Commercial District C5 and declaring an emergency. The Planning Commission recommends approval of this rezoning request. The title of the ordinance reads, an ordinance amending ordinance number 3307, the same being the zoning ordinance of the city of Springdale, Arkansas, and the plat pertaining thereto, by rezoning certain lands from Agricultural District A1 to Thoroughfare Commercial District C5 and declaring an emergency.
Move the ordinance be adopted.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. Any other questions or comments?
Is that attached to a larger deal that's going on there, or is this just
It's actually
isolated?
just a single piece of property that's left in that large area.
It's an old house, isn't it?
Yeah, the house is gone, but it's rezoning that one holdout piece to the same zoning as the rest of it is in the area. But right now, it's not being added to another project.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
I just want to test my audio real quick. Is it working?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I don't think that's.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Flores,
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman,
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus,
Yes.
Howe,
Yes.
Williams. Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Move the emergency clause be adopted.
Flores,
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman, Fugierus,
Yes.
Howe,
Yes.
Williams. Watson,
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Both the ordinance emergency clause carry 8-0.
And again, emergency clause are added to pending actions on these properties. The second one is a 1.15 acre tract located at 1201 South Old Missouri Road. The request is to rezone the property from General Commercial District C2 to Light Industrial District I1. Planning Commission reviewed this request and recommends approval of the rezoning request. The title of the ordinance reads, an ordinance amending ordinance number 3307, the same being the zoning ordinance of the city of Springdale, Arkansas, and the plat pertaining thereto, by rezoning certain lands from General Commercial District C2 to Light Industrial District I1 and declaring an emergency.
Was this unanimous, planning commission vote?
Yes, it was.
Move the ordinance be adopted.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. Any other questions or comments? Anyone in the room need to speak to this one? Okay, Denise?
Harriman. Fugierus.
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Williams. Watson.
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Flores.
Yes, ma'am.
Move the merge clause be adopted.
Second.
Fugierus.
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Williams. Watson.
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Flores.
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman.
Yes, ma'am.
Both the ordinance emergency clause carry 8-0.
The next request is to rezone 0.4 acres located at 916 Parker Avenue. The request is to rezone the property from Commercial District C2 to Medium Density Multifamily Residential District MF12 and declaring an emergency. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the rezoning request, and the title of the ordinance reads, an ordinance amending ordinance number 3307, the same being the zoning ordinance of the city of Springdale, Arkansas, and the plat pertaining thereto, by rezoning certain lands from General Commercial District C2 to Medium Density Multifamily Residential District MF12 and declaring an emergency. And there was some question at Planning Commission meeting about what impact it had to the properties on the south side of the street. There are already single-family homes there that are non-conforming use. This is the same situation. This property was zoned commercial, has a single-family home in it. Other than the question of what effect did it have on other properties, I think that's the only question that was raised at Planning Commission.
So these are gonna be apartments over there?
It has the possibility of being apartments. It's a pretty small tract. I doubt if they can get much of a building on there, maybe a duplex at the very most, but it's a very small tract.
Duplex?
Is that an appropriate buffer for that going from C2 to MF12?
It serves as a buffer. I mean, that's what the rest of it is, MF12. I would have had a problem if they come in and asked for it, an SF1 or an SF2, because I think that would be an inappropriate use of the property. But to put a duplex in there as a transition, most of those houses along Parker Street are single-family homes in an MF12. And I think that happened because when we transitioned the zoning, they're very small lots. And they went from an R2 to MF12 simply because the size of the lot's not necessarily about the density itself.
Yeah, I move this ordinance pass.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any other questions or comments? Anyone? Okay, Denise?
Powell.
Yes.
Williams. Watson.
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Flores.
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman.
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus.
Yes.
Move the merge clause be adopted.
Second.
Williams. Watson.
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Flores.
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman.
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus.
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Both the ordinance emergency clause carry 8-0.
The next request is to rezone 6.4 acres on the east side of Butterfield Coach Road, just south of the Walmart Neighborhood Market. The request is to rezone the property from MF24 to Thoroughfare Commercial District C5. This property was previously rezoned C5 and was asked to be rezoned to MF24. We looked at an apartment complex at that project, at that site. It had some challenges with the drainage that went through it, and that never got off the ground. So they are asking to rezone the property back to C5. The Planning Commission recommends approval. The title of the ordinance reads, an ordinance amending ordinance number 3307, the same being the zoning ordinance of the city of Springdale, Arkansas, and the plat pertaining thereto, by rezoning certain lands from high-density multifamily residential district MF24 to Thoroughfare Commercial District C5 and declaring an emergency.
Move the ordinance pass.
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second to approve. Any other questions or comments? Anyone in the room to speak to this? Okay, Denise?
Watson.
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Flores.
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman.
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus.
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Williams.
Move merge clause be adopted.
Second.
Overton.
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Flores.
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman.
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus.
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Williams. Watson.
Yes.
Okay. Both the ordinance mercy clause carry 8-0.
Luis needs a minute, but we can do this one. The next item is actually an ordinance addressing a Scrivener's error that was in ordinance number 5666. So the title of the ordinance that's in your packet was incorrect, and the title of the ordinance needs to read an ordinance amending ordinance number 5666, which rezones certain lands from general commercial district C2 to medium high-density multifamily residential district MF16 and declaring an emergency. There was an error in the legal description, and all this does is replace the previous one in ordinance number 5666 with the correct legal description. That's the only change that's in it. We couldn't get it on the map because it didn't close.
I'll make a motion the ordinance be approved.
Okay, motion is second to approve. Any other questions? Roll call.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Flores.
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman.
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus.
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Williams. Watson.
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Move merge clause be adopted.
Second.
Flores.
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman.
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus.
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Williams. Watson.
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Both the ordinance mercy clause carry 8-0.
Okay, Lewis, can you move it for me? Okay. The next item is a resolution considering a conditional use for a use unit 44 mobile vending for a mobile vending unit called the Cheesy Goat to be located at 2403 South Thompson. Planning Commission recommends approval of this rezoning request, and here's a layout of the location of this food truck or mobile vending unit with the following conditions. May not operate between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. The health certificate is required to display the health certificate in a manner visible to customers. No obstruction of traffic signals or regulatory signs. No vending upon a public way. No sound devices that produces a loud and raucous noise in violation of city ordinance or violate any other ordinances in connection with the vending operation. The sites to remain clean and free of paper or refuse of any kind generated from the operation of the business, with all trash or debris accumulating within 20 feet of any vending stand to be collected and deposited into a trash container, subject to hours of operation submitted with the application, and is subject to the water and wastewater plan that was submitted with the application. And the title of the resolution reads, "A resolution approving a conditional use for Brian Richardson, the Cheesy Goat at 2403 South Thompson, as set forth in ordinance number 4030.
Now, Patsy, anybody that wants to do mobile vending, can they come to you and do that anywhere in the city?
Well, certain zoning classifications, it's got to be zone commercial before you can go in. And it
Okay.
has to fit on the site, and they have to meet all the qualifications of the distances between the two, how it sits on the site, if it has designated parking spaces,
Mhm.
and it has to be able to show us how they're gonna take care of their clean
Like
water and their gray water.
On-site manager and all of that, is that all?
All of that's taken care of with
All
the
part of that.
conditions, and these are the conditions and how they operate. We discussed that as it goes through conditional use.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be more than one truck. I don't know where,
No, we
Got
have a
that.
mobile truck or a food court
food court.
that
Right.
sets a different kind of standard, and the first one we have is there on 265.
Yes.
Just north of Don Tyson, and it went through all of the process to get that in as a large-scale development plan. But
Okay.
these can go on individual sites as long as the distances are met, and they're there for more than 3 hours, and he asked for a variance so he could be hooked to electric, and that variance was granted, subject to the conditional use being approved.
Thank you.
So who are we granting the conditional use to?
To Brian Richardson for this
Brian Richardson is who?
is this gentleman standing right over here.
Well, I mean, is he the one that would operate the Cheesy Goat?
Yes, he is the operator and is granted to him at that location. It
What about
can't
the
be,
property owner? Are they
property
involved
owner-
somehow?
the property owner has to sign and agree to allow it to be there and to designate the parking spaces. All that's done before it ever gets to planning commission. We've got to know those conditions have been met. and it is granted to this operator at this location only. It can't be transferred to another location or a different food truck at this location unless they come back through the process. Okay? The difference in a food truck court, they control the trucks that go in and out. And we go through the process, and they can change them out every day if they want to. But in this case, this is this one at this location only. Okay?
I'll make a motion that the resolution pass.
Second.
Was that a second?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Any other questions? Anyone? Okay, Denise.
Harriman,
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus,
Yes.
Howe,
Yes.
Williams. Yes. Watson,
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Lawson. Yes, ma'am. Flores.
Yes, ma'am.
Carries 8-0.
And the last item is a request for a waiver of street improvements, drainage, curbs, gutters, and sidewalks in connection with a large-scale development plan for Frito-Lay warehouse being built on Kendrick Avenue. Kendrick Avenue, as you know, is one of the projects that has grant funds and is moving forward as a city project. Planning Commission recommends approval of the waiver of street improvements. So this would be a resolution with option 1. The title of the resolution reads, "A resolution approving a waiver of street improvements, drainage, curb gutters, and sidewalks set forth in ordinance number 3725 to Frito-Lay warehouse in connection with L 2228, the large-scale development plan."
And what's the city's intent on this road?
The city has a project to improve Kendrick that's
It's-
being funded with grant funds.
Right. It's, I think I heard about 90% plans
I
right
think
now.
so.
Is that
yeah.
right, Ryan?
Mhm.
So it'll be a bond project. It's one we've been figuring on.
So what you're asking is just improvements along Kendrick, there are no other improvements
Yeah,
That'd
there's
be
no
right.
other street access for this, but they would have to do no street improvements.
to
They'll
Kendrick?
dedicate the right of way. They don't have to do any improvements at Kendrick. They still have to meet all the other city's requirements for development for the
Oh,
warehouse.
While you're looking at that map, it's a good time to just refresh everybody. But the improvements to Kendrick, if you look over on the left, on the west end, that will be Kendrick. We've gotten permission from RDOT to connect Kendrick to RDOT rather than making that curve into Jefferson. So it will connect directly to 265.
We don't see the need to have sidewalks over there on that?
I think the
build 'em-
plan will have sidewalks that
We'll
goes
build
with
them
it.
with our,
Okay.
with the road
Yeah.
improvement.
Right.
With the road project.
Yep. And streetlights, because those are the
Yeah.
requirements for the street.
What streetlights did you say?
Streetlights, curb gutter, and sidewalk.
So this would waive streetlights as well?
Right, that's part of the street package. All of that will go with the public facilities project that's being designed and implemented through the bond program.
Move resolution passed with option 1.
And what about right-of-way?
They will dedicate the right of way
Yeah.
with the large scale development plan, so it's not one. And the Public Facilities Board owns the rest of the property. So they either dedicate it to us before or we get it with this large scale. That's just part of how the project moves forward.
We got a motion and a second for option 1, Mike? Yes. Is that right? Okay. Any other questions or comments? Anyone? Okay, Denise?
Fugierus,
Yes.
Howe,
Yes.
Williams. Watson,
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Flores,
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman.
Yes, ma'am.
Carries 8-0.
All right, thank you. Luis, do we have Omar? Omar, can you hear us?
There you go. Omar, can you answer one more time, sir, please? All right, go ahead, Omar.
I'm using the phone.
Now we can hear you well.
Okay, great. I'm regretfully in the Dominican Republic right now.
Well, I could tell by the trees you weren't across the street. And Omar, I hope I wasn't being unfair hitting you with that, but I just got that information this afternoon about what future improvements we would expect Emma to look like as far as the the size, the width of the street and the sidewalks. And just wanted you to consider that and see if you had any initial thoughts on that. That could be part of your, if the council moves this forward, that could be part of your due diligence, whether you decide, to move through with it or not. But I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, my response is just if it's good for downtown Springdale, then we're probably all for it.
All right. So at least preliminarily, we're looking at besides the donation of the 60-foot right-of-way to the access to the property to the south, we're also looking at right-of-way for future improvements to Emmett. So I just wanted the council to be aware of that, because none of that's reflected in the appraisal. So council, I've kind of made my feelings known. I don't need to rehash it again. I think this is good for Springdale. It's good for downtown. It's when we have a full value offer like this, I really don't see, as long as it's a property that we don't foresee ever needing, then I think we're better off to let a developer put that property to work for the residents of Springdale, create jobs and create businesses. So that's just my thought on it, but I'll open it up to the council. I've read the resolution.
Mayor, wasn't there a question about FFA, something with the?
The
building
FAA?
FAA, sorry.
Yeah, it is outside whatever they call their zone.
Okay, so
Yes.
the
But-
height of the building
right.
isn't a concern?
But again, that would all-
part of the-
Yes, but again, that would all be part of this due diligence period that Omar would have to make sure whatever he was wanting to build there would work.
There was also a question, Mayor, that you said something about being a 3-story minimum, and then I had a discussion, I heard it was a 2-story.
Hey, Mark, we can't hear you.
Mark, we're hearing you, but it's really garbled.
Never mind.
Yeah, so I'll speak for Mark. He was
Maybe you can
talking
hear him
about
better,
the 3-story requirement, and he had heard that it was actually a 2-story requirement. I think that, Patsy, you can give clarification on this, because I believe we met and talked about this.
The form-based code will set the standard, and there is a minimum height that he would have to build to. And that it also sets a build-to line so that the appearance along Emma Street would be consistent with what we're looking for the downtown plan. Now, as you go to the south of the property, as it faces onto the street to the south, we can make different, because that's a secondary street. So he has an option to put different styles of buildings in there that could allow some courtyard spaces in between it, but we would still have the ability to have the look on Emma Street that we're looking for all the other buildings that are going down through there. No matter who builds there, it's the same thing. The dedication of the right-of-way for the street improvements is part of what goes along with building under the form-based code too as well.
Oh, okay.
So we take care of all those things
Okay.
at the same time. And there is a minimum height and a maximum height.
But it's feet, it's not stories? I mean,
It's 2 stories or 35 feet
okay,
is the minimum, if that's the right, and I don't have my form-based code with me.
okay.
But it sets all of those, and it also sets a maximum, but we also have to take into account the distance from the airport. So all that has to be worked into the design as we work through with what type of building, whether he wants a liner building, whether he wants a different kind of commercial building that's allowed in that. It all has its own different standards of what can be built at that location, regardless of who builds it.
Yeah, and to touch on that a little bit more, is part of that 6-month due diligence period, we'll be working hand in hand with Patsy to make sure that we're in alignment with what the downtown is wanting to look like, as well as being in compliance with the form-based code.
So I wasn't at the committee meeting. Is this an offer contingent upon being able to get a building approved for construction at that site? So in that 6-month period, we would work through all that process to make sure it could be done before it's actually closed. And then what time frame does he have to start construction? Is that part of the deal?
That we haven't addressed.
Okay.
If that's something that the council would like, if they wanted to entertain, wanted Omar to entertain some sort of clawback provision or after a set period of time, gives him a set amount of time to begin the construction.
The large scale itself is only good for a year.
Okay,
It's to start construction within a year, and then the large scale would have to be renewed if it was longer than a year. I know that question
but
has come up.
since he doesn't have the large scale yet, if the council wanted to put a clawback
Right.
provision of, I don't know, year and a half,
Does-
18
yeah,
months.
what's
yeah.
the time frame that he would have to start construction? I mean, I asked that question because I've been asked that question.
Okay.
Would it come with a condition of he has 6 months to decide whether to do it, and then once it's approved, does he have to start with construction within a certain amount of time? And so I didn't know if that was discussed the other night or not.
It was not. Thoughts, council?
I spoke with Omar and I really like his vision. You know, he helped us on the deal to get the land for the senior center, and I appreciate that. He seems like he's really focused on downtown and making it a better place. I move the resolution be adopted with an 18-month clawback provision.
Start of construction, isn't it, Randall?
Let's just do start of construction. Do you think that's okay, Omar? Do you think that would give you plenty of time?
Yeah, I think 18 months after the sale is perfectly fine.
18 months after it closes? Or after?
Yes.
Okay.
Just,
Yeah.
just to be clear, that would mean that the contract would include a provision, and if it closes, it would also be included in a deed restriction that the city has the right to purchase the property back for the same price if construction is not commenced within 18 months from the date of closing.
That sound right to everybody? Is that consistent with your motion, Randall?
Yeah, if that's cool with what Omar's wishes are on that.
All right. We'll need to get a second or the motion will fail. Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve with those conditions. Any other comments or questions?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to ask Patsy, back to the stand. Patsy, explain to me, I should know this, but explain to me again, if you're talking about the right-of-way dedication would be part of the large scale, we can require them to dedicate right-of-way as part of a large scale?
We do it on every project that we have. They have to dedicate right-of-way that meets with the master street plan as it's adopted. We get that all the time.
Okay, so I'm not sure if what you're talking about takes care of what the mayor was talking about earlier.
It's the same thing. We have a
I think it does.
streetscape function for that section of street that's already been done. We would ask for dedication of that to meet with that standard when that's part of the large scale that we go through.
Those numbers that the mayor mentioned earlier is part of the streetscape plan?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And we do that on every project. You see dedication of right-of-way. Even if we waive street improvements, we get dedication of right-of-way, so when the city goes back and does the work, we don't have to go back and acquire the right-of-way too.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what the master street plan does for us.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Patsy, before you leave the stand, I hate to make you walk back, but I just wanted to emphasize, I'm sorry I wasn't able to get a hold of the the presentation. I just want you to help confirm that this is in compliance with what H3's recommendation is for the downtown master plan for being a mixed-use development in this area.
Yeah, it is in that NC2 form-based code that allows for that mixed use, that sets the standards for how it can be done. He and I talked about using a courtyard building as the type of building that he would use. It comes with certain standards and the way it has to be put together. It fits on the lot. We haven't gone through all the details, but just looking at it really quickly, it looks like it could work. Now, it always takes time to get through all the details to make sure everything's like it should be, but we do that on every project anyway. What he's taking is on the cost of design and having that all ready to go to be able to buy the property. And that's not going to be cheap because he's going to have an architect and he's going to have an engineer and spend that money to know that he can get to the point where he can buy it. And so that's just part of his due diligence and decide whether that's really what he wants to do, to move forward with. We can't tell him that it's an approved project till we see all those details.
Any other comments or questions? All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution as amended. Roll call.
Powell,
Yes.
Williams,
No.
Watson,
No.
Overton,
No.
Lawson,
No, ma'am.
Flores,
No, ma'am.
Harriman,
Yes.
Fugierus,
No.
Fail 6-2.
All right. Thank you, Omar. All right. Number 13, Finance Committee. Chairman Jeff Watson. Jeff?
Okay. We had 3 items before the Finance Committee. First item has to do with payment of a Carroll Electric bill that came to us late during the construction of Shaw Family Park. And what we're being asked to do with this resolution is to pay this Carroll Electric bill out of the general fund. The resolution was approved or forwarded by the committee with recommendation for approval. The title to the resolution is a resolution authorizing payment of an invoice project number 18BPP1.
Mayor, this, one little correction from that, we're asking for this to be paid for out of the park set-aside fund, which has about $716,000 in it.
Right.
So this was a invoice that came in well after the park fund was closed from the bonds. And it's from Carroll Electric, and instead of depleting and trying to find ways to pay for it out of the street portion of the bond, we're getting down to the end of the street bond, and so we need to make sure we have plenty of money in there to finish those projects. We have plenty of money in this park set aside, so it would be most beneficial to the city to take it from that fund.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Any other comment or questions? Okay, Denise?
Williams. Yes. Watson,
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Flores,
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman,
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Carries 8-0.
The second the second resolution has to do with the purchase of property along Willella, how you say it?
Willella?
Willella.
Mhm.
And for the purpose of the senior center. The committee forwarded this resolution to council with recommendation for approval. Title to the resolution is a resolution authorizing the purchase of property located at 108 Willella Place, Springdale, Washington County, Arkansas. Move the resolution pass.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Any other comments or questions? All right. Denise?
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Flores,
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman,
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Williams. Yes.
Carries 8-0.
Third item is a resolution request from the police department for use of funds from the drug seizure fund. And it's for purposes of improvements to the indoor firing range in the amount of $14,248.81. This resolution was also forwarded to council with recommendation for approval, and the title to the resolution is a resolution to appropriate funds for improvements to the police department firing range to be paid from drug seizure funds. The resolution pass.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Any other comments or questions? Anyone? Okay, Denise?
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Flores,
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman,
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus,
Yes.
Howe,
Yes.
Williams. Yes. Watson,
Yes.
Carries 8-0.
All right, item 14, health, sanitation, and maintenance. Chairman Amelia Williams. Amelia?
Thank you, Mayor. We have an ordinance ordering the raising, demolition, and removal of certain residential structure within the city of Springdale, Arkansas, located at 302 Cottle, to declare an emergency and for other purposes. This was forwarded from committee with a recommendation for approval. Tom Evers presented this at committee. He's our chief building inspector. Tom, any new developments?
Good evening, council. Good evening, mayor. I'll answer any questions. Just a quick summary. We've all talked about this for a couple months now. This will be the second meeting that the property representative hasn't shown up. Third meeting ago, council had asked for him to provide receipts of ordered windows. Timeframes of like 2 or 3 months were given. Had no communication with him since.
Move ordinance forward.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. Any other questions or comments? Do we have anyone here from the property in question?
I don't believe they are, mayor.
Okay. All right, Denise?
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Flores,
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman,
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus,
Yes.
Howe,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Move emergency clause be adopted.
Flores,
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman,
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus,
Yes.
Howe,
Yes.
Williams. Yes. Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Both the ordinance emergency clause carry 8-0.
Thank you, council.
All right, thank you, Tom. We're at item 15, ordinance committee, Chairman Mike Overton. Mike?
Yes, Mayor, we have ordinance amending Chapter 82 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Springdale pertaining to door-to-door solicitation and declaring an emergency. And what this does, and the city attorney can expound on it, it spells out the penalties for violating our ordinance, which does require a permit issued by the city clerk in order for door-to-door sales to occur in our city.
That's right.
Did you read it, Mike?
I read the title. yes.
Okay, okay.
Move the ordinance be adopted.
All right, we got a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, if the city attorney would just explain the.
Sure.
The difference?
Ordinance.
This, the way the ordinance read previously, it said that a violation of the ordinance was punishable by section 1-9. This more clearly sets out what is meant by that, what the possible penalties are. I will say that since this was addressed, I guess twice at committee, once it was discussion item, then we brought an ordinance back. I actually had a citizen contact me about a door-to-door solicitor coming to her house, that she had the sticker on her door that says no soliciting, the official sticker. And she told me the company that had knocked on her door, I actually called the company. It was a pest control company in Rogers. Actually, I called the city clerk's office first to find out they had a permit, and they did not. So then I called the pest control company and advised them of the city's ordinance, that they need to get a permit before they can go door to door. And we're not supposed to knock on a door that the sticker is prominently displayed. So hopefully this will deter them from, I know there's roofing companies and pest control companies that have been pretty active recently. I actually had one knock on my door Friday night, and I have a sticker on my door.
Ernest, you might remind citizens where they can get a decal to put on their door or their window.
Yeah, they're available at the city clerk's office at 206 Blair. They're free.
And they're free.
And they're free.
And please, if you do have someone that is a solicitor that comes to your house, I encourage people to ask to for the person to identify themselves and who they're with and show their permit. They are required to wear a lanyard with an identification that clearly identifies who they are. And if you do have a sticker on your door that says, "No soliciting, call the police."
And we do background checks on those people,
Yes.
correct?
Yes. Or they're supposed to provide a background check from the state police. We don't do it for them. They provide it. So.
All
We
right.
have a motion?
We have a motion and a second. If there are no other comments, I'll ask for the vote.
Harriman,
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus,
Yes.
Howe,
Yes.
Williams, Watson,
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Flores,
Yes, ma'am.
Move the emergency clause be adopted.
Second.
Fugierus,
Yes.
Howe,
Yes.
Williams, Watson,
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Flores,
Yes, ma'am.
Harriman,
Both the ordinance emergency clause carry 8-0.
All right. Let's see, I guess we're at 17 now. I'll read, this is an appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of a rezoning request for a PUD located at Parkview. We need some background on this, Ernest?
At the planning commission meeting was it the April meeting that this came to the Springdale Planning Commission? There was a request to rezone property from, I believe it's at A1, Agricultural District A1 to Plan Unit Development. I was actually at that meeting. There was quite a bit of discussion regarding the particulars of the proposed plan unit development. And as you know, a PUD combines the zoning aspect with a platting aspect in one. So that's why we kind of dive into the details of these particular projects as opposed to just a straight rezoning. The Planning Commission did deny the rezoning request. The ordinance, this is the first time, to my knowledge, after working for the city for 24 years, I believe this is the first time we've ever had a plan unit development that was denied. A planning commission appealed to city council. We discovered there were a little bit different rules than your normal zoning appeal, which normally is 15 days for a plan unit development. They actually had 30 days to appeal. They did file within the time period, so that's why it's on the agenda tonight. And as you know, a zoning decision is an amendment to the city zoning map, which only the city council can do. Planning commission only makes recommendations to the council. Say if they make a recommendation, a certain property would be rezoned. We had 2 or 3 on the agenda tonight, but the final action is taken by the city council because that is a legislative decision that only the city council can do by ordinance. So it's been the practice of this council. I don't know what's going to happen with this appeal, but the property owner does have the right to appeal to this council a decision of a denial by the planning commission. It's been the practice that if the planning commission's decision is overturned, then at the next meeting, we would actually bring the ordinance back before you, or the ordinance would actually be considered to actually constitute the rezoning of the property. And since it is a PUD, it would also necessarily involve the specifics of the development plan associated with the PUD, which possibly could involve any variances or waivers that may be approved, that may be needed for any aspects of the project. I hope I stated that properly. So I do know the property owner, the developer is here with their attorney, and I guess the floor would be theirs because it's their appeal of the planning commission's decision.
Mr. Kate, so the variances go along, so if the PUD passes or not, it all comes in one package?
Well, as I mentioned, in a plan unit development, because normally if you have, let's say, a residential subdivision, which this is proposed to be, normally the first step is the property has to be zoned to whatever particular residential zoning district is applicable. Then when they went to develop the property, they then bring in a preliminary plat, which is measured against the city's minimum standards. In a plan unit development, those two processes are merged together. So it's not just a rezoning. You don't have a rezoning and then you come back with the plat. It's all done together. So that's why, as I think Mr. McCready will say, the details matter. Because when you approve a plan unit development, you're approving the details of the development as well. Is that?
It is. I apologize. I've met with about both parties over the last week, and I wasn't aware there was a question about, are the variances, would that be voted on tonight?
It wouldn't be voted on tonight. Like, as I mentioned, the appeal is heard tonight. If the council were to vote to overturn the planning commission's decision, it would take the council passing an ordinance,
I see.
rezoning it to PUD and approving the development plan, and that may not be the actual technical term, but that would be, traditionally,
Okay.
the council has done that at a subsequent meeting.
Okay,
I'm
thank
not
you for
gonna be
clarifying.
presumptuous and bring an ordinance tonight thinking that it's going to be overturned. We'll let the council make their determination and we'll move forward accordingly.
Thank you.
Ready? Excuse me. I do have a PowerPoint that, if it's possible to get that pulled up, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name's Larry McCready. I represent the owner, Scout Enterprises LLC, who's also the developer of this project. As was referenced, a representative of the owner is here, Cammie Scott. She's here tonight. Also part of the development team is David Gilbert. He's the engineer who worked on this project. He's here as well tonight. We all are available to answer questions that you have, so please let us know. At the outset, I know all of the council has been given a lot of information. They've heard a lot on this. I have a little bit more to share. I will try to be brief, but I do want to say I appreciate the diligence that you've all had in hearing not just the developer side, but I know you've talked with residents in the area who oppose the project, and just that interest in it is appreciated, and I wanted to acknowledge that. As Ernest said, that we're here just to hear this appeal from the Planning Commission. Yes, okay. I want to give just a little bit of information about the developer and the owner of this. It's Scout Enterprises LLC. It is a local business that's been in Springdale for many years. It focuses on, among other things, residential development. And the piece of property that it's developing here is along East Brown Road. It's about 10 acres. It's currently zoned A1. And rather than pursue an agricultural use, which is how it's currently zoned, and it's also, that's an area of business that Scout is involved in, so it is within their purview to do it. But rather than that, they wanted to develop it for a residential use. And not just any residential use, like a conventional residential use, they wanted something a little bit more unique. And so this concept for Hawksview subdivision was established. The subdivision, as I mentioned, it's roughly a 10-acre lot. The plan is to develop 8 residential lots ranging in size from about a half acre to just over an acre in size. The home sizes that are proposed are they range from 1,000 square feet to 4,000 square feet, in all of which would be a 3-bedroom, 2-bath design. And that's important for the septic systems that have to go on this system that I'll talk about in a little bit. And as was mentioned, the request was to rezone it from A1, which is an agricultural use, to a planned unit development. This development and this use is consistent with the city's master plan, which is low-density residential use in this area. Although the rezone was denied at the Planning Commission, it is important to point out that it was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission staff. They looked at it and they recommended approval. And I think that's important to keep in mind. The history of the way this project involved, I think, also bears a little bit of attention. This concept was developed over 2 years ago in 2020. The developer and city staff have met numerous times in that time period. And the goal has always been to get feedback from the city to make sure that they are pursuing things that would be not only comply with the city's requirements, but also are desirable for the city. I can say a large portion of the delay that took place was because of its location in the karst region. And the planning commission, or the planning staff, wanted to get some additional feedback from Fish and Wildlife Service. That contributed quite a bit to the delay in the process. I do want to point out, though, that the project was never actually considered by the Planning Commission. It was not denied by the Planning Commission before it came back up this past April. That was the first time the project was considered. The development plan that was submitted, it's in your agenda packet. It's fairly detailed, but that is in there so you can see all the detail that was proposed. One of the issues that has come up is, and it came up at the Planning Commission that I do want to address, is included in the development plan was a use of chickens, okay? This was just a use that the developer, the owner, wanted to try to make sure that the owners in this would have the same rights, uses that other residents would have. And I think an email exchange between the engineer and Patsy will help clarify what the owner's intent was. Originally, when this was being developed, one of the uses that was proposed was Unit 7, which was agricultural husbandry. That is a conditional use that's allowed within PUDs, and we included it in the submission. There was some question about it, and so this following exchange occurred between Mr. Gilbert and Patsy. This was done on March 18th, 2022, 2 to 3 weeks before the Planning Commission meeting. David Gilbert, the engineer, wrote, Patsy, I think we're leaning towards taking out use number 7, animal husbandry. It appears to be geared toward allowing larger scale livestock operation. The owner's intent is more along the line of allowing residents to have a few chickens, rabbits, etc. for household use. If we remove Unit 7, how can we allow for that? And then he just said, I'm trying to finish up the revisions for the development plan today and we appreciate your input. Patsy responded on the 21st, that Monday. I think she was out of the office on Friday, and she responded that I would suggest that you be as specific as possible on the numbers and types of animals that are to be allowed, chickens, rabbits, etc., and how are they to be maintained. So based on that feedback, the owner and Mr. Gilbert spent some time developing the standards that you see in the development plan for chickens, rabbits, etc. At the Planning Commission, it was pointed out right at the outset that chickens are not permitted in anything but A1, including PUDs. It was agreed that they would be removed. That is the position of the owner today, and it hasn't changed. The reason why it still appears in your materials is because, frankly, I don't know how to remove it from a development plan that's on appeal. And there was concern on our part that if we tried to submit something else tonight, it would be considered a new submission that would have to go through planning again. So let me say clearly and unequivocally, we agree we will remove any reference to chickens in this PUD. We have no desire to include that, and that will be removed. And we agree to that. So I hope that will clear up any confusion that exists regarding the chickens. But it's also an example, I think, of how the owner has tried to work with the city as well to collaborate and get guidance and guidelines that are acceptable. There was no effort to try to force something in that otherwise would not be allowed. So hopefully that point is clear. The plat of this development, that is up there. I know it's a little bit small. There's 8 lots starting in the northeast corner. That's lot 1. They're numbered just 1 through 8 going around that road. There's a asphalt road that goes down the middle. There's also a 2-acre common area that is dedicated along the south portion of the of that property that is included as well. I really don't know whether that's called Lot 9 or not, but that is common area that's available for use by anybody that is within Hawksview subdivision. Now, I mentioned that the owner tried to develop a unique subdivision here, and so I wanted to mention the two things that we think make this more unique than a conventional development. The first part is the design features, and this was really driven by the fact that this property is partially located within the karst recharge area. So some different development techniques have been incorporated into that design that you won't typically see within a normal residential subdivision. The whole emphasis of these design features was to maintain surface water quality that's tied to the karst ecosystem. So that sort of drove much of what was proposed to be done within this subdivision. The other thing that I think that makes this unique is the type of homes that will be used. Rather than using conventional new construction, the owner is going to use existing homes that are scheduled either to be demolished, otherwise go in the landfill. Scout has experience doing this, and they've done it several other homes within Springdale. And I'll show you some pictures of that here in a bit, but it is an established process, and it results in unique, I think very sharp, very nicely appeared and built homes that I think would be a benefit to the city and its residents. So let's talk a little bit about those design criteria that I mentioned that are incorporated. These are the resources that were used that drove the design by the owner and the engineer. The Drainage Criteria Manual, Chapter 106 of the City of Springdale Ordinances, the Northwest Arkansas Stormwater Education, Pollution Prevention, Grading, and Erosion Control Best Management Practices, or BMPs, that manual. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Community Growth Best Management Practices for conservation within the Cave Springs Cave Recharge Zone. EPA stormwater BMPs were also used as well as the Arkansas Pollution Control and Ecology Commission Regulation Number 6. These things that I mentioned, these resources they're fairly substantive. These are copies of them here. They're put together by stakeholders who have a vested interest in a desire to maintain this karst ecosystem. The owner shares that and tried to incorporate these features within this development. And as it says on the slide there, the overall goal was to permit the development of property in a manner which will not degrade or adversely affect the water quality of the Cave Springs direct discharge area. So that's what drove the development. And so some of the design features that are in this subdivision, they're listed here. There's an asphalt road, 24-foot wide with 4-foot gravel shoulders. Let me clarify on this because I think there's been some misunderstanding. The road that you saw on the plat that services those lots, it's an asphalt road. It is not a gravel road. It's an asphalt road. There are gravel shoulders on either side, which is all permissible under Section 112-4 of the city's ordinances in a state subdivision. This is also consistent with the Environmental Protection Agency's stormwater BMPs. The driveways in this is another deviation that you don't typically see. They're not concrete, but instead they're a crushed stone or an aggregate that's designed to be pervious, to allow water to get through. That is all part of the design of this to help minimize stormwater runoff that can have an impact on the karst zone. As I mentioned, there's a 2-acre common area. I think the city requires for a PUD a 15% of area dedicated for green space. This is 20%, exceeds that standard. The drainage in the design of this is all centered around maintaining the natural sheet flow drainage across this property. Again, that's consistent with the stormwater BMP manual. There is water-loving vegetation that will be incorporated around the houses. That as well is designed to help control any stormwater. And there's also features like rain barrels that will also be used. Again, the idea is to control any of the stormwater runoff that's produced by the houses. And really it's the roofs, because that's the only other impervious area that will be put on these lots. So the deviation from what's conventionally done is there's not curbed and guttered streets, there's not paved driveways, and there's not a detention pond. The reason for this is that when you do extensive on-site grading, it disrupts that natural flow of water and potentially has adverse impacts on the car system. So that was all designed to be eliminated in the design that we have here. And again, the why that we're doing all this, this is a quote from the Stormwater BMP manual. It just says natural drainage patterns that consist of overland flow, swales, and depression should be used to convey runoff through the site to avoid constructing an artificial drainage system, because you want to preserve the natural drainage patterns on site as much as possible. As part of addressing these karst features, and as well because the city requires it, the owner had a drainage study that was conducted for this property and for this development. Copies included in the agenda. The study was done by David Gilbert of Plymouth Engineering. He's a licensed engineer. He's here in the audience tonight. This study was submitted to the city planning department. It was reviewed by the city engineering staff. Mr. Gilbert met, I don't know how many times, I think it was more than once, with the engineering staff to go over it. Throughout this process, there weren't any inaccuracies pointed out or any issues that were raised that we were aware of. I've yet to hear of any issues contesting the results of that drainage study. The drainage reports for time, I won't read the whole thing, but the conclusion in bold at the bottom is that there is a very small increase in runoff that may be seen as a result of this development. It's a 1/8 of an inch. And to help put that in context, that 1/8 of an inch is derived from what is described as a 100-year event, a rain that you only see in about 100 years. Worst case scenario. It also assumes on each of the 8 lots that a 4,000 square foot home was built and a 4,000 square foot outbuilding was built. So it would be the maximum size of each building on every lot. And it also does not take into account any of these lid or low impact development features like rain barrels, vegetation that are incorporated. So this 1/8 inch increase is really a worst case scenario that, although you have to plan for it, is very unlikely to ever be seen, because it's unlikely that every house moved onto that site is going to be of 4,000 square feet. And it's unlikely that every homeowner is going to build a 4,000 square foot outbuilding in addition to that. So the drainage study supports the conclusion that the impact that this is going to have on drainage in the area is minimal or negligible, and that's important. As I already mentioned, there's not any plans for on-site water detention. And again, this was a conclusion that was looked at and made as part of the drainage study. Detention is problematic on this site due to the lack of on-site drainage channels and the desire to maintain existing drainage patterns. In other words, and I know some of you have gone out and looked at the property, it's relatively flat up on top and it gently slopes. When you get into trying to create an on-site detention pond, you have to alter those natural drainage patterns. When you start to channel runoff, that begins to create problems in the karst system. The design to not include detention was intentional because the goal is to maintain those natural drainage patterns. And we want to avoid concentration of runoff. And so to meet these things, it's listed there, we want to maintain the sheet flow in shallow concentrated flow. The roadway, that asphalt roadway with the gravel shoulders, is designed to fit the contours that exist out there right now. And water is going to tend to sheet flow in an east-west direction rather than collecting in roadside ditches because of the way that road is designed. And then the north-south portion of the drainage, it maintains the goal is to maintain a wide and broad area of flow, free of ditches, to encourage that water to spread out as much as possible. This next slide, this is a picture of the topography of the site post-construction. So after the road goes in, this is what the topography looks like. I didn't include in here, and I should have, but I didn't include the pre-construction topography map. If you care to look at it, it's in your packet. It's one page before this one. Page 110 of your appeal packet. But if you did look at it, or if you care to look at it now, the topography map before and after construction is nearly the same. It is the same. In other words, the design is to keep it as consistent as possible from what it looks like right now to what it will look like after these improvements go in. It's also important to point out that not all the water in this subdivision is going to drain to the north or drain towards East Brown Road. You can see on this topography, and I did bring a little pointer, I don't know if that will work. There's this line right here, okay? It's too small to read, I don't even think I can read it now. But this is the line in which the water that is south of that line will flow to the south. You can look over in this area and you can see the topography lines. The water here currently drains to the north and to the west. That is going to be maintained. There is flow that goes to the north in this area here.
We can't see your pointer.
I'm okay, that's true. So what I'm looking at though, and what I was trying to describe is the directions. So
Is there any drainage to the east?
A little bit, and if you look on the eastern edge and the southeastern edge of that topography map, you can see the contour lines that will push that slightly to the east. These are the contours that exist out there now, and they're not going to be changed because of the way this subdivision was designed. One other point to make is that, so Lot 8, if you start in the northeast corner of this piece of property, this rectangle, and you go clockwise around, is just to the west of the road. That is the lot that adjoins two neighbors to the north. That really is the only lot that will drain to the north onto those adjoining property owners. The drainage that is shown there is exactly the drainage as it exists now. The only increase is going to be any rainwater coming off the impervious roof that sits on that one lot. That is mitigated by rain barrels and by vegetation, and as well as the amount of space that exists between that house as you go north to that property line. In other words, the amount of increase based on this development is minimal. The owner even attempted to contact one of the homeowners there, was unsuccessful, but they're open to other features that might help or make that homeowner feel better, such as a berm. They're still open to trying to do that. But the point is that the drainage that exists out there as it stands tonight is going to be what it is after this development is put in, if it is approved. So now just a few things about the homes that are planned to be used in this subdivision. As I said, the plan is to move existing homes that currently exist that would otherwise be scheduled to be raised or demolished. And as I said as well, this is a process that the owner has employed on more than one occasion. It is a regulated process. You have to get a permit to do it. It has to be bonded, but it is a process that is established and the owner has experience doing. Why does she want to do this? There are several reasons. One, it's an environmentally friendly process to do. You cut down on the use of new building materials. That's something that is at the forefront of a lot of developers' minds. Cuts back on materials that end up in the landfill. And to give an idea, the types of homes that are sort of fit this category is, hey, if a farm sold for development, you have an existing farmhouse there. That is a example of something, rather than be destroyed, it might be able to be reused. If a road is being widened, there are sometimes houses that are within that right-of-way that's being expanded that otherwise have to be removed unless they can be reused. It helps control cost, and as I said, it's environmentally friendly. And I'll also say that there is an existing list of homes that people have contacted the owner about that are candidates to do this. So there is a supply of these homes out there that can be used. Once these houses are moved, they're placed on a new foundation and they're brought up. They have to meet all, any structural components are replaced, and they have to be brought up to current building codes. Same thing with the plumbing, mechanical, electrical systems. They all have to be updated and brought in compliance with building codes, just as if it was new construction. And then the interiors and exteriors are remodeled or replaced as needed. The results are unique homes that meet all the safety standards that the city requires. They provide a more affordable and sustainable source of housing for the city and its residents. If you look at your screen, there are some pictures that show a before and after of this. So along the left-hand side of this screen, there are 3 houses and their addresses are there. These are homes as they existed before they were moved by Scout. In the right-hand column, this is the after version. This is after the houses have been moved and finished. This next slide, again, it's another property. On the left, you have the house as it existed before it was moved. Right below that is the after picture. That's that same house after it was remodeled. Along the right-hand side, there's just pictures of the interior. The top one is the interior of the kitchen as it existed before it was moved. The bottom picture is the what it looks like after it was remodeled and finished. And this is just another slide with pictures showing the post-move condition of these houses once they've been completed. I think anybody would be hard-pressed to know that this was a house that was slated for tearing down but got moved, remodeled, and saved. That's what the plan is in Hawksview subdivision. Now, as everybody knows, there's been opposition to Hawksview, and it really, in our view, it's focused along 3 main points: that the homes that are being proposed to be moved in are not appropriate for this area of the city.
So Larry,
Yes, sir.
Is there any kind of a size requirement in the PUD on the homes?
There is. It's a fairly big range. It's 1,000 square feet to 4,000 square feet. It's got to fit within that slot, and it is a little bit wider because the supply of houses that fit the criteria to be moved, it varies, and so it gives some tolerance for what those houses were to bring in here. But that is within the PUD, 1,000 to 4,000 square feet.
I'm assuming, Larry, are the houses that are moved in there, are there instances where there are additions to the houses where they may be bigger than the original footprint?
Probably, yes, and I think
Okay.
you can see it back, like in this picture, if you look at the before,
Yeah.
you know, there's no, that covered porch is not there, it's there afterwards. I think they may add on to it. The square footage requirement would be the finished product.
So are the lots not for sale? Every lot would be developed by the current property owner? Is that the plan?
Well, the plan, that is the plan, that the developer would develop each of these 8 lots. Within the PUD, though, there's flexibility to, you know, build the developer to build it or to sell a lot. It would still have to meet the requirements, though, that are set up here for what the
So
end
if
product
a
is
lot
like.
was sold, whoever bought the lot could build whatever they want as long as it's within those size restrictions.
Well, not really. They wouldn't be able to do extensive grading and things that would deviate from what has been approved within the PUD. The plan, though, is for the developer to move all 8 on there. It's a smaller project and smaller subdivision, and her
Right.
plan is to build all 8.
Right.
So that's been one of the areas of opposition, is that these homes aren't appropriate. People have raised concerns about individual septic systems being used in this subdivision that are not appropriate in a karst recharge zone. And then there's also the issue about drainage that exists in that area, and that the subdivision is gonna make that problem worse. And,
I'm sorry to keep interrupting
no,
you.
that, please do.
On the septic system issue, maybe I was mistaken. All these years I've thought that you had to have an acre to put the septic system in. And some of these lots are smaller than an acre, right?
They are. They were made smaller to include that common area. I don't know whether or not that requirement still exists within a PUD. I don't think it is, because the regulations are new. What I can say is that the Arkansas Department of Health has considered this subdivision in that plat as it's drawn, and all of the lots accommodate both a primary and a secondary septic field. That's
So
part
do
of
they
the
share the septic field, the
No, sir.
lateral lines, or each lot has its own?
Each lot has its own. Each lot has its own.
So Patsy, do we know about a PUD allowing a lot smaller than an acre to be used?
They submitted the information from the health department that indicates what size areas needs to be done for each of the septic systems, and it's on the plat itself. So we know where the primary system is, where the secondary system is. They're all contained on the same lots. Septic systems are controlled by the county, not the city. And so we go with whatever guidelines they provide for us. Now, that some of the lots are smaller, but there is common area in the back that can't be used for development, so we don't have encroachment on any of those septic systems. And that's what's a little bit unique about this one, too. Okay?
Bottom line is, the septic systems will have to be approved, and that's not really our
Right,
issue.
they have approval
Right.
for the septic systems that are shown on the
Okay.
plat itself. That was one of the requirements before we were allowed to be submitted.
And Mr. Watson, if you could, I'll get to that in 1 second, have a little bit more information, and we can explore that a little bit further. But about the appropriateness, the end product, I think the pictures speak for themselves. These are nice, modern homes, I think, that will fit well within the city. There's been some suggestions that the lot sizes are too small in the larger area that it's in. And in here, they were originally designed as all of roughly 1 acre, a little bit bigger. When we did that common area, a couple of those lots became smaller. The ones that did reduce in size all back up to that common area. So there is plenty of green space there, but the lot sizes are all consistent with the city's master plan for low density use. And like I said, it's adjacent to that common area. There's also been suggestions that the home sizes themselves are too small, or the 1,000 to 4,000 square foot size of these homes don't fit in with some of the larger estate size lots that are in that area. What I would say, and I'll show a slide in a second, these lot sizes are completely consistent with the adjoining property that surrounds the tract that's being developed. And here is a slide that shows that. In the middle in the pink, that's the 10-acre plot. And these are all the properties that surround that actual subdivision. They range in size from 700 square feet up to, I think the biggest one is close to 2,700 square feet. And their size is all in between. So this is what immediately surrounds it. I think what is different, and what you'll see from some of the opponents who have submitted their materials, is that they say, and they're beautiful homes, but there also is more, I don't know how you want to describe it, modest, smaller housing that immediately surrounds this piece of property that's being developed. And I would submit that it provides a great transition from the houses that are much smaller to the south to as they begin to get bigger as you go to the north. I will say up in the corner, that lot that has 2160 square feet, there's an asterisk there. There's also a chicken house on that piece of property. So there's all kinds of uses in that area. Many of the houses around here, particularly the south, some of them are manufactured homes. Some of them have been there a long while. I don't mean to put down any of the houses, but many of them look like the before pictures of some of the houses that she's moved. So there's all kinds of housing in that area. What's proposed here in Hawksview is consistent with what is currently there. Now to get back to the septic systems, Jeff, this plat, and I think that it'll come up again on the next slide, it shows where the primary and secondary fields are. And I also think it's important to keep in mind, you can see that small rectangle and there's an arrow pointing to it. That shows where Hawksview, that's the property. So you can see only a portion of this property is in the karst zone. I'd call it probably the northern 2/3 of it is in the recharge zone. But it's in zone 2, which is high vulnerability, but it's not the extremely high vulnerability. I think that's been misrepresented a little bit in the past. That area that is in the zone 2 of the higher vulnerability, that is about 3 of those lots in the subdivision. So the majority of the lots are at or below where that karst zone stops and are not in it. So I wanted to point that out as well. Again, here is the plat. This shows, you can see on here, if you look on each lot, there are those squiggly lines. That is an area that's been designated as the primary and secondary septic field for each of these lots. Only 2 of these lots, and it would be 7 and 8, they're the ones on the north and on the west side of that road. Well, and there's also lot 1 on the east side. Those are the only 3 that flow downhill to areas, but lot 7, which is in that northwest corner of the property, there isn't a house on the other side of that boundary line. And I understand the concern that some of the residents have about putting septic systems in that zone. I would point out, though, in fairness, is that most of the people who are raising that as an issue live just a little further north in the most extremely high vulnerability of the karst zone, and they all have septic systems. And so I don't think it's fair for them to take advantage of a septic system on their property while at the same time saying another property owner shouldn't have that same right. Particularly when, as we'll see here, these designs, the general design, has been examined and approved by the Arkansas Department of Health. The plat was submitted to the Arkansas Department of Health, and they sent this letter back. And what I pulled out there, and it says, based on the information provided in evaluation of the proposed site, this project is granted local approval based on the following provisions. You can read those provisions. None of them are gotcha ones. The main thing to keep in mind is that once an individual house is identified to be put on the lot, an individual septic permit will have to be obtained. And so a designated representative is going to analyze that again and make sure a septic system will fit with the exact house that will go on there, and it will have to be permitted. But on the design that was submitted, the Arkansas Department of Health said, yes, this works, and it meets our safety standards. There's also been some discussion about the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has opposed this project. There are letters in your packet that you can read it. They don't say that they oppose it. They defer to local control. I think more importantly, this document here, this is put out by the Fish and Wildlife Service. This is one of those documents I referenced before. It's the Community Growth Best Management Practices for Conservation of the Cave Springs Recharge Zone. It has a section in here that specifically sets forth the procedures for subdivisions using on-site sewage disposal. Paragraph 3 of this, it says the Arkansas Department of Health's Environmental Health Specialist will evaluate the site and write a letter with their findings to the Arkansas Department of Health Engineering Division. Special consideration will be given to the sites that may pose a potential problem for ecologically sensitive areas. The next paragraph states, following a recommendation from the environmental health specialist, the engineering division of the Arkansas Department of Health will write a letter of approval or denial, usually in conjunction with the subdivision's water system, to the property owner. That's what this letter is. It is a letter of approval saying that septic systems are approved in this area. They have looked at the site, they're aware of the karst zone, and they approved it. So any allegations that the Fish and Wildlife Service opposes this, I would respectfully submit are just wrong. This is the letter that shows it. And those are the guidelines that this letter is based on. The last or the third of these major issues of opposition that seem to have developed is the drainage. I've already said about the drainage study that was performed. The drainage study shows minimal impact on the surrounding area. Talked about the other features that have been incorporated to help control the runoff. And then the third point to point out is that any drainage issues in that area, and listen, the owner will be the first to acknowledge there are drainage issues in that area. You can go out there after a heavy rain and you can see them. But the point is whether or not they're caused by that property that the owner owns. The drainage study says they're not. We have engineering data that's been prepared by a licensed engineer, it's been reviewed by the city's engineering department. It says that is not a cause a problem of that drainage that exists out there. These are pictures that are taken of the property. And I believe it's Mr. Stevens' driveway. He spoke at the Planning Commission. I totally understand his position. This is what his driveway looks like. He has submitted photos as part of his packet of information. And one of them is on page 314 of your packet that shows what this looks like when the full flood is in effect. There's no denying that. The question is it caused by the property where Hawksview will be? And it's clear that it's not. You can see from that picture, that water is entering that site from the north and from the east. That's in the city of Lowell. I believe Mr. Stevens acknowledged that fact at the Planning Commission meeting when he spoke. And the transcript from that meeting is in your packet as well. It is starts on page 225. And this is, I'm quoting Mr. Stevens here from that transcript. He says, I have lived there, meaning his home, many, many years. And this never happened until a subdivision went into the east of us, okay? That's supported by the picture he submitted. That is an acknowledgement, in my view, that this flooding is caused by something that happened to the east of them, because it didn't flood before that subdivision went into the east. That predates Hawksview, okay? He went on to say, and he even acknowledged, he's like, does all the water come from Hawksview? The answer is no. The suggestion, though, is that some of it does. And by his earlier statement, he said he never had flooding like this before that subdivision. And so the question is the subdivision, if it's going to be approved, is it going to contribute to that? And I would submit there is no evidence that it does. We have engineering data that supports the fact that it is not going to add anything of substance to the problems that he is experiencing there. I feel for it, the owner feels for what he's going through. But a problem that exists on his property that was caused by a previous subdivision should not be the impediment to her developing her property in a manner that meets the city's standards and for which engineering data that's looked at this issue has studied it and has concluded it is not going to create a problem. And I haven't seen any other engineering data other than a few pictures that contradicts it. And I would just ask y'all not to let a picture that obviously shows a problem, but it does not show that the problem is caused by her property. In sum, Cammie Scott thinks this is a project that is positive for so many reasons. It will provide much needed, affordable, unique housing, larger lots. It'll be constructed in a responsible, sustainable manner. And any of the issues that have been raised in opposition, I feel are not supported by the overall facts that have been presented. And so we would ask that the council overturn the denial of the rezone request that was done by the Planning Commission and approve this subdivision. I know I was long. I appreciate your attention. I'm happy to answer any questions as well as Mr. Gilbert, the engineer, or Ms. Scott as well.
So I have a few questions.
Yes, sir.
What about the common area? Who's going to be responsible for taking care of the common area? The property to the, I guess that's.
To the south.
To the south, yeah.
Yeah, there's a POA and.
POA of 8 homes?
It is, yes, but that was suggested, I don't even know if it was required, it was certainly suggested by Planning Commission staff, and we incorporated that to make sure that the maintenance of that common area is kept up.
Okay, so then so the drive that comes up off of Brown Road is also common area, correct?
I guess it would be considered that, yes. Although I don't recall, is that dedicated to the city? Okay, the PUD has the dedication of the city, of the road to the city. So that would not be common area.
Does it meet city standards?
Yes.
It does not have curb and gutter, so it doesn't meet that standard.
Well, it doesn't meet that standard, but as I referenced, it's section 112-4, I think, it's for estate subdivisions. That design,
Okay.
asphalt, 4-foot gravel shoulder, is an approved standard to use in this type of subdivision.
So we're responsible for mowing that?
Well, it's gravel. I don't think it would
Well,
be.
the whole width of that little thing, whatever you want to call that little strip that goes up to the larger portion,
It's asphalt.
would be asphalted?
It's asphalt, yes.
There won't be any grass on each side of the road there, and no sidewalks?
Well, there's not sidewalks. There'll be grass there that are part of lots that are owned.
No, I'm talking about the strip that comes off of Brown Road that goes up to.
So let me try and.
That's my question.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, from East Brown to the property line, there is that X. I see what you're saying.
Is that part of the PUD? Because it's not within that rectangle.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
All right, but that'd be common area that the POA would be responsible for whatever mowing and grass would be left. And there's gravel on each side of a blacktop drive, correct? And you know what happens when gravel's left out there? Grass grows up in it and you lose the gravel.
Right.
That's the plan?
That would be the POA's responsibility. And one of the reasons why the POA or the PUD was selected was so that the city would be able to maintain a role in enforcing this. I think code enforcement could do it anyways, but the city has the ability to enforce that. The responsibility would be the POA's. If they didn't, the city would be able to enforce that standard because of the PUD.
Uh-huh. Okay, I had another question, I forgot it, so maybe I'll come back to it.
And what was the vote on this at planning?
The commissioners voted 7-2 against it. The staff had approved, or recommended approval, rather.
So what prompted your decision to appeal it as opposed to going back and maybe working with planning more to figure out some of these details that I feel the planning commission didn't support? I don't think anyone's against the house. Well, can't speak for everyone. I'd say the majority is probably not against the houses, or even the septic. But I feel like there's a disconnect between what you're presenting and what was, shut down at planning. And I'm kind of just wondering why it was appealed as opposed to going back and working with planning on this.
Well, at Planning Commission, we didn't get a single comment from a commissioner. I don't know what reason they gave. I think one of the differences in this process versus the Planning Commission process is that the education and the understanding that y'all took to really understand what this development was about was much deeper. The development plan, I think, was submitted on the 25th and it was voted on the 5th. It was a very short period of time. We certainly, in looking back, I think it was a mistake. We didn't spend the time going to individual commission members to educate them. We went to a working group meeting and there was only a couple of commissioners that came. But the other thing is this was a process that was developed over 2.5 years with the planning staff. I don't know what additional work could be done to help iron out some of these details. I think because the education and that fell on us to educate them about this because that was lacking, I'm not sure if they totally understood the nature of the project. I think they saw, oh, there's flooding out there. It's in the karst. I don't want it. I'm guessing, I don't know, like I said, there was not feedback provided by any commissioners at the meeting.
I remembered my question. Thank you. Actually, it's a question for our engineering department. And Mr. McCready has suggested that our engineering, the City of Springdale's engineering department has reviewed Mr. Gilbert's study and agrees with Mr. Gilbert that basically, other than 1/8 of an inch, whatever that means, this is not going to affect the runoff. This plan would not affect the runoff into this bowl where water collects.
May I just interject one thing? I didn't mean to say that they agreed with every conclusion. I think what I said is there wasn't any issues raised to us that we're aware of where they questioned the
But
results.
see, but the problem is once, if this were to get approved, it basically becomes our problem. And if it does create additional runoff, although there's a big sometimes somebody's going to have to address. And I just want to know if this is going to cause additional problems, it's going to cause us to have to address more of a problem.
So per our drainage criteria manual, chapter 106, it says that any development proposed in Springdale, they do have to mitigate their runoff to make sure the flows don't exceed the pre-development state. For this project, they had proposed to us rain barrels on the houses. That is not something that's typical per our low impact development manual. We don't have any calculations last I saw on how much water the rain barrels are actually going to mitigate. And it's not something that we see as being something that's maintained efficiently. At minimum, we wanted to see calculations on how much water the rain barrels will hold back, as well as a maintenance plan. That was on our last comments to Mr. Gilbert on our review, and that was made back in March.
So basically, each house would have a rain barrel that collects water off the roof. Is that basically what that is?
That's what they've proposed.
Yeah. And so the property owner, I guess, from now on has to take care of their own rain barrel.
And that's the issue we're raising is what guarantee is there that these rain barrels are going to be permanent fixtures? Is someone going to take them down in the future and then thereby increasing the flow off the property? Those are questions that we have, as the engineering department, have raised.
And did you get answers to the questions you requested back in March?
Last I've seen on our project management software, we haven't received updated comments on those.
So when you're reviewing the analysis, are you reviewing it to make sure it meets the manual and that you're checking the calculations? Is that basically what you're doing?
Yes, that's what we do.
So you're not, the design is stamped by a registered professional engineer. You're just reviewing just to make, you're just checking calculations and just the design overall.
That's correct. We review the design to make sure it meets our ordinances and our drainage criteria manual.
And are you verifying the runoff amounts that is shown in that design?
That is something we review, yes.
Okay.
But you're not comfortable, you were wanting more information because of the rain barrels?
On the mitigation measures themselves. We've gotten the pre and post development, but they haven't incorporated the rain barrels into that. Right now, we're currently seeing an increase of about, I think it's 20% across the board on this property from pre-development to post-development. To make sure it meets Chapter 106, we need to see the mitigation calculations to prove that their
And the only way
post-development
they can
flows
meet
aren't
those
exceeding.
Mitigation calculations is with rain barrels, is that correct?
I haven't seen those yet. We haven't gotten those submitted to our department at this time.
Do you think you've been clear in your request to them for that?
Yes, that was on written comments that we have submitted as part of the development process.
Ryan, the 1/8 inch, and this may be a question for David, I don't know, but the 1/8 inch, that, if I understood Larry right, that 1/8 inch is considering 8,000 square feet of roof per lot? Is that right?
David, you want to
said
speak to
a
that?
4,000, up to a
That's what I
4,000 square
said.
foot home
But
and a 4,000 square foot, or a 4,000 outbuilding?
First, let me apologize. Ryan has mentioned that they sent comments back, and I don't ignore comments. I will have to check and see. I don't remember seeing that particular comment. The last item I saw from engineering regarding rain barrels that I can remember, and I'll go check to make sure I didn't overlook something, was a statement by Katie Hollingshead that rain barrels are not recognized in Springdale's BMPs or Springdale's LID manual, to which I sent her several documents from the US EPA stating that I agree, they're not included in Springdale's LID manual, but they are widely recognized and promoted by US EPA as a low-impact development measure. The difficulty is that you can't calculate how much rain barrels are going to mitigate because it comes down to the question, when it starts to rain, is the rain barrel empty or full or somewhere in between? If the rain barrel is full, they don't mitigate at all. If the rain barrel's empty, they may eat all the entire runoff from the roof from the entire event. And so mathematically, as an engineer, I just don't know how to calculate that. But we will work with engineering toward that. And again, I apologize. I don't remember seeing the request for those calculations. And we'll have to talk about how do you do calculations on something when you don't know.
What do you think about the issue, Mr. Gilbert, about the property owner being responsible for maintenance of his or her own rain barrel?
Yes, and that's another issue with the rain barrels. I mean, we'll put them on there and hopefully they'll be properly used and maintained and things will go well. Obviously, the developer has an interest and will be retaining a lot of these parcels, and she can go by and make sure that they're being properly maintained. So they're not there.
She may be retaining them, but she may not.
Well,
Once this is approved, we don't have any control over that. Correct?
Understood. You mentioned the 1/8 of an inch, and let me tell you how that was derived. Mr. McCready is partially correct. Some of the lots, all of the lots are the way that the plan is written, home sizes will be between 1,000 and 4,000 square feet. So we went and we considered that a 4,000 square foot home was on each of the 8 buildable lots. Some of the lots allow for 4,000 square feet of accessory building. For those lots, we calculated 4,000 feet of accessory building.
Some of the lots allow a second approval from the POA to allow up to 8,000 square feet of accessory building. For those lots, we assumed 8,000 square feet. That's what I consider to be the worst-case scenario. In the 100-year event, the drainage runs off of this to the north in a path that is 640 feet wide. Right now, what's running off of that is, I got my numbers here, let me make sure I don't tell you something that's not right. Right now, the runoff that's coming off of that property in a path 640 feet wide is calculated to flow in the 100-year storm with all of, just in the pre-existing condition. It's calculated the depth of flow to be 0.04 feet, or about half an inch. That's everything that's coming off of there now. When we consider all of that build out and put everything on there in the worst case scenario, the post-developed drainage is calculated to flow at a depth of 0.05 feet, or about 0.6 of an inch. It's about 1/8 of an inch is what it works out to. The difference between what's going there now and what would happen if everybody built everything they were allowed to do, and there were no rain barrels, and there was no water-loving vegetation to intercept the flow. That's the worst-case scenario. Now, the developer has put into the plan to build rain barrels and to build this vegetation around the houses to help soak up some of this water. Again, it's very hard to calculate, but the worst-case scenario, which in my opinion will not be realized, is that the depth of water flowing off the site increases by 1/8 of an inch. We did ask for a variance. There is a requirement in Springdale's ordinances that every single project have detention. That is, I'm going to say it's a relatively new requirement, but the problem with that is I've been working in Springdale for 25 years, and sometimes what I think is new is 10 or 15 years old. So bear that in mind. But it is a requirement. We did ask for a variance from that requirement as part of this package. The problem with providing detention in this area is that right now, again, everything's flowing off of that site in a path 640 feet wide, and it's this deep. If you put in a detention pond, you have to collect it and put it all in one place. And there will be a discharge pipe coming out of that detention pond, and somebody's going to get all of that water in one place on their property, and we'd like to avoid that.
Sorry to keep being the one to ask questions, Larry. So, David brought up an interesting point, the 8,000 square foot, outbuilding. Are we talking barns, shops? Is kind of the goal here is for, and I realize a lot of people want to live in the country and have a shop in their backyard. I mean, I get that. That's very attractive. Is that what you're aiming for?
That is what we're talking about. There's not any other, I guess one of the uses requested was as well as home office. Is that the request of it? So that would be a permitted use in there that I conceivably someone would be able to use it for. But the idea is you're living on a little bit bigger lot, and if you want to shop there, it would be permitted in addition to your house. I think as well, you can see in some of the houses that were moved, they don't have attached garages on them. So others might use those for garage purposes for their vehicles.
Numbers for that. He went back and did his own. So we did 2, and then I asked him to go back and to review those numbers again, just to be sure of the validity of those numbers on it.
Hey, Patsy, I hate to put you on the spot, but does planning have anything to add to this based off the past 2 years of these discussions?
we have been through a lot of details. We have worked on this for a couple of years, trying to get it to the point where we could bring it to the planning commission with things that would work. One of the concerns I still have about the street is that it's not a standard street. Originally we talked about it was going to be a private street, but when they submitted it, it was a public street. I mean, that could be taken care of. You don't have to accept it as a public street. It could be an approved private street, and then we don't have that concern. That puts a little bit more burden on 8 lots having to maintain a street. It's going to be tough. And I understand why you came in the other direction. I mean, that's a lot to put on 8 lots, but it's an unconventional street that we don't have any place to maintain it. It is allowed in a state type setting in the subdivision regulations, but it also states that there has to be some green swales to the side, and I don't know if it meets all those standards. I don't get into the street standards necessarily, but I know it's different than something that we've ever done before. It meets the density requirements. It is low income. It is low density residential development, not low income. It is low density. That's something we've said for that area. The type of houses that are coming in are unconventional. She wants a year to be able to complete those out once she brings one in. That was something we talked about. We can't just have one sitting out there that meets the standard, has been tied down and brought to the safety standards, but it doesn't have the exterior materials put on it. So she indicated in there that that would be done within a year. That doesn't seem to be unreasonable. We set the type of materials. I mean, we've been through lots of details trying to get to a point where those kind of things from a planning standpoint can be taken care of. The car system and the drainage system is still something that's engineering's department, not mine. So I can't answer anything about that. Does that help?
Yes.
Well, I guess I didn't quite understand what you said about the street. Is it going to be a city street or not?
They are proposing it to be a city street, yes. That's what this proposal is.
So the part about the common area is just on the sides of the street.
Right, and
Well, do we have a
if-
right of way on, if it's a city street, is there a right of way on each side of the street?
There would have to be a dedicated right-of-way for it, for us to go in there and be able to take care of it, the asphalt itself and the gravel and whatever the areas that are left over. I mean, that's normally how we get a street as a dedicated street. The common area does require a POA. I mean, how else is it going to be taken care of? It is identified in their development plan and the covenants that goes with it, how that's going to work. It has an architectural review committee that reviews the plans made up of the developer and a couple of other people there. That's who the architectural review committee is. The sizes of the accessory buildings seem to be a little large when you look at the areas that are outlined for septic systems. I don't know how you're going to get, in some of those lots, you're not going to get them on there. Maybe that's something that we could cut back some of the size and lessen the impact if the accessory buildings weren't quite so
Well,
large.
If we overturn the planning commission's decision, when do you look at those other things again? You say maybe that's some things we could tweak, basically is what
Well,
you're saying.
I
but-
mean, we
but-
gotta, this has to come back with an ordinance, and I would assume that if you overturn the planning commission's decision, then they would come back with a development plan and all the things that address the comments that we had at planning commission, like taking the chickens out. And I'll take responsibility for that, because when we were talking
Now,
about,
They basically had a plan before the planning commission, which is what they were asking to be
Right,
approved. And-
right.
And some of those things that you're talking about maybe tweaking now had not already been tweaked when it went to the planning commission.
That's correct. But can it be sent back to the planning commission with these new tweaks for the planning commission to look at it again? You have the ability to send it back to the planning commission with however modifications that you're going to indicate need to be done. So I mean, I'm not trying to drag this out, but we still have to go over, if you overturn the planning commission's decision, we still got to go through all of those details so that everyone knows when this is approved, this is what it's going to be. This is what the development plan says. This is what the covenants say. And the only way that can change is to come back through the process to get it amended.
So if we overturn the planning commission, because what we're overturning is their denial of the plan. So if
Correct.
we overturn it tonight, aren't we just saying, okay, the plan's approved?
Well,
Ernest? Is that right, Ernest?
No, an ordinance would then be brought forward with the development plan, with the changes that you have indicated and that the developers indicated that they would be willing to make. Did I state that correctly?
Or you send it back to planning commission, it goes through that review process again. The planning commission approves it, it comes to you with all those changes. If they deny it, we're back to where we are now.
You do have the option to send it back to planning commission for further study, I think is the language in the zoning ordinance.
But
There would be no time limit on that. As far as, I mean, if the council overturns
That's
the
up to
planning
you.
commission's denial, whether it goes back to planning commission then, or whether they work with planning department to get some of these issues worked out, they got as much time as they need to do that?
No, if
Okay.
if the planning commission's decision is overturned, an ordinance will be brought back at the next.
Okay.
And it's
council
what's
meeting.
in the ordinance what's in the
That's right.
plan that came to the planning commission,
Whereas
correct?
it could be just sent back to planning commission for further review without overturning the planning commission's decision, if that makes any sense. So the important thing we always want to maintain is that everything's done with transparency so that the public knows what's going on. So
all right,
Sorry.
Ernest, I hate to do this to you. Can you repeat that last part of, we can send it back to planning commission for further review? Even on appeal, we can do that?
let me find the ordinance, I'll read it to you. Yes. Because, like I said, my opening comments about this is that the city council has the final say-so on amending the city's zoning map, which in essence, a rezoning decision, that's what it does. It amends the city's zoning map. That can only be done by the city council. The planning commission makes a recommendation to the council. If they say no, it could end right there. But the property owner does have the right to appeal to this body, but our ordinance provides that you can either uphold the planning commission's decision, overturn the planning commission's decision, or refer it back to the planning commission for further review and study.
And by referring it back, they can tweak it there and give us it would have to go back to the planning commission process, wouldn't it? Or would it come back to us as if it was still appealed?
So can it be tweaked without going back to the planning commission? No.
Well, that was gonna be my question. I mean, obviously, the issue with the chickens, use that as an example. That was brought to our attention at the planning commission, that it shouldn't be out there, it was agreed to be removed. And as I explained, I don't know the process to remove that. There's no disagreement. I assume that whatever ordinance would come back, if you do overturn that planning commission decision, would be as amended as we're directed to tonight. But I don't know if that's an option or not. That's what I assumed. I mean, obviously, if we can't take the chicken stuff out, then I have a feeling I know the outcome of this vote. I thought we would be able to do that without it going back to the planning commission.
Well, and what I was gonna say is that there's an old saying that we use a lot around here, which is no good deed goes unpunished. And Mr. McCready made the point, and he's correct, that he did not want to make any changes between planning commission and this meeting so as not to give the appearance that, something was being changed in order to get it through, whatever. So I appreciate that, and I hate, if it gets referred back to planning commission, I hate it being seen as perhaps punishing them for leaving it the same. But you have the final say-so. You can send it back to planning commission. You could theoretically table it to the next city council meeting if you wanted to, for decision as well, as long as these folks that are here, whether they're for or against it, are aware of what's going on. That's the
Ernest,
important thing.
the ordinance does say the city council may approve the proposed amendment only by majority of all the members. And that's in that very last paragraph, sentence in that appeal by petition
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the city council following disapproval of a proposed amendment. Does that mean they can propose amendments? If y'all approve it tonight, then it goes into the document to come back next time?
No, I think what they're talking about, the proposed amendment is the amendment to the zoning map. Is what it's
Oh, okay,
referring to.
wrong section. Okay.
So You have a lot of, you have a lot of leeway here. You're trying to balance the interests of the developer and the interest of making sure that whatever decision you make is the right one, and also doing so in a manner that is open to the public.
So aside from the chickens, it had to do with the road and the common area, and all of that needs to be added to that as well, correct?
I think that, if I remember correctly, there were 2 variances or waivers that were requested. One had to do with the streets and one had to do with detention. Is that correct?
Waiver of detention and a variance to the street standards.
The street standards is not a variance. The street standards is contained in your code of ordinances okay, the ordinance addresses that. The criteria are 100 feet of lot frontage minimum. Every lot in this subdivision has 100 feet of frontage. The second criterion is 10,000 square feet of lot area. These start at half an acre and go to an acre. That's well in excess of 10,000 square feet. The third criterion is that they either have to be on wells or septic systems. They use a little more formal language than that. They say private individual water and or sewer systems, but basically it's wells or septic systems. These are all proposed for septic systems. We meet the criteria of the ordinance, so I don't think we need a waiver from the ordinance because we're meeting the criterion of the ordinance. And it does say that under that condition, that a 24-foot paved street with 4-foot gravel shoulders. It also says appropriate ditches along the side, but we don't have any ditches in this development at all. So I would submit to you that appropriate ditches in this context is no ditches. To Mr. Watson's point about mowing, you own part of my front yard, but you don't mow it. There's a city ordinance that requires me to mow all the grass all the way to the sidewalk, which butts up against the curb. Even though some of that's yours, I'm required to mow it or I can be fined. So along the lots, I don't see that as being a problem. The strip.
I was more interested in the drive.
Yeah, and that's a good point that I hadn't thought of before, but we can make sure that the POA takes care of that. And then it's only the strip along the drive to Brown Road.
That on the planning commission agenda were 2 waivers, 22-05 and 22-06. Which weren't taken up because the rezoning was denied, but what were those waivers
Oh, the other
pertaining
is
to?
paving of the driveways. 'Cause
So-
they're not proposing to pave any
So the 2
driveways.
waivers had to do with the street and the detention and the driveways?
Detention and paving of driveways.
David, is this the one you're using that says stabilized shoulders at least 4 feet wide and a solid drainage swell of at least 5 feet wide and 12 inches deep with a slope of 3 to 1 on the street side and at least 2 to 1 on the other side as an estate?
Yes.
Okay, do you have those drainage swells that are 5 feet wide and 12 inches deep?
We do not have the drainage swales because, again, we're trying not to concentrate
Okay,
any
so
water,
that's-
so we're,
That's the street standard waiver.
okay.
It's not exactly what it says here as that standard.
So other than what Mr. McCready was saying about the chickens, what are the other tweaks? And I keep hearing that word tweak. Is it,
I think I used that.
is it the right of way you were talking about, Patsy? Is that the other issue?
It's all the details of how the ARC is set up. It's what materials you can use for the exterior materials, what the setbacks are, what the size limitations, what the use units are. It's all of those details that are part of the PUD.
And that's that long list that you read every time we
Right.
approve, and that would come back with an ordinance.
Right.
But they've already presented all that, right?
Right, and there are still some areas in there that needed discussion. Is 12 months the appropriate amount of time to finish out the houses? I mean, that's what they're proposing. No action was ever taken on that. They have 90 days to move them in. They have to get them tied down and meet safety standards, but there's nothing in there that says how long it has to be before the exterior is finished. So I asked them to put in there, they said 12 months. Is that an appropriate amount? We didn't talk about that. The materials they want to use for siding, those are the kinds of things that we get into with a PUD. They're using plantings around each of the structures. as low impact, what are those? How are they put in? How are they maintained? If that's part of what the drainage is to take care. There's many, many pages of details for a PUD that we go through every time, because this is a contract between the city and the developer on how this thing's gonna
When
work.
do you go through those details? Before or after it's approved by the planning commission?
We went through all those details before the planning commission took action.
Okay, so you've already, then you have done those details
Right.
then?
The
So what
details
else-
that you have before you are the very same ones, including the chickens.
So,
that the-
so are you
that the
saying
planning
there's some
commission took
things,
down.
what Brian is asking, are you saying there's some things that still need to be dealt with?
Well, if you're saying everything that the planning commission went through and didn't address the questions because they turned it down are fine, then that's okay.
Well, when did those questions come up? Before or after the vote by the planning commission?
Before, we went through all of those questions, all of the details. I go through everything of those and we ask questions. We have discussion. We didn't know, no one planning commissioner identified anything in particular that they were voting against. Those that vote, they just voted no.
Okay.
I mean, I can go through all those tonight if you want to do that tonight.
So there's, the chickens are the only tweak then?
Yeah.
Is that what
Basically.
I'm surmising
That's
out of all
that's
this?
what I'm hearing.
Well, I have questions.
Here, I'll turn that on.
So the chickens obviously was a question that I had. The city maintenance of the street that didn't have curbing, that was the other one. That are we used to taking over a city street that has no curbing, that has gravel instead? The home business part, that was a question, whether the home business, the PUD grants that to the house, or the city ordinance on home businesses, it has to still come through us.
I think Mr. McCready stated it's limited to home office, which is all that's allowed anyway in a residential subdivision. Which is allowed in a residential, which a home occupation does have to come for a conditional use. A home office does not.
Okay. So those were the ones that I had written down that would need to be addressed.
Far as the street goes, I believe the proposal as submitted would involve the dedication of the street as a city street.
It does.
But I can't tell what the width would be from the plat.
It's 24 foot.
24 feet? Is that just the asphalt, or does that, I'm sorry?
43 foot right.
So does that include just the asphalt, or does that include asphalt and gravel?
24 wide of asphalt, 4 of gravel on either side, so it's a total of
32.
32. Yeah, and that's correct.
And the reason I ask that is your point is, I have to defer to someone else, but I can't think off the top of my head we've ever accepted a city street with gravel in the right of way instead of curb and gutter, or it's just, we may have waived it but left a ditch or something.
Since I've been here, we've never accepted the street that had curb shoulders that I'm aware of. Now, we took some in when we took in
County.
sides and we taken in annexed areas, yes. To actually approve a subdivision with that in there, I don't think we've ever done that.
And I think that's true. I think it's also true. It's permissible under the code. Then there's a judgment decision y'all can make, so.
It's still a deviation because it's, the width of the shoulder is correct. It just doesn't have the drainage wells that section would cut out.
So to be clear, the two waivers, one is for the having gravel driveways as opposed to paved driveways, and that's to minimize the
The
runoff.
the impervious materials used.
And the other one has to do with the waiver of detention, which was similarly addressed with the rain barrels and some of the other LID
And
features.
just the excavation that would need to take place in order to create detention. It would completely alter the natural drainage on the site, and it would concentrate it coming to the detention pond and then as well going out of the detention pond.
I'm just trying to narrow kind of what the you know, with the tweaks might be or not be.
And then the drainage swells on the side of the road. Drainage swells on the side of the road. Right. Correct.
Is that because that would interfere with the natural sheet flow
It is. It,
rather than putting it in a ditch?
correct. It
Okay.
would require the excavation to create those because they're not there now.
Right.
And then it concentrates that flow coming down that hill. It increases velocity and all of that, the things that we're trying to avoid because of the karst region.
Well,
Let me-
I'm gonna make a motion. Can I make a
Well-
motion?
I don't know if we have other property or
we'll,
comments.
you can make a motion anytime you want. I was gonna suggest,
Comment.
all this talk, between this bottle of water and all this talk about stormwater, I've gotta take a break. Would it be all right to take about it doesn't have to be a long one. About 5 minutes?
Can I-
Good enough?
Mayor, can I ask just one question? Because then unless others have
Yes.
questions for me, I'll be done. But is it possible to amend and have the ordinance come back as amended with the changes for the chickens? I mean, there's no opposition from
Yeah.
our,
I
from our
don't
parts.
think the chickens, I think we got that.
Well,
Yeah.
procedurally, can we get that removed without it going back to planning commission?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank
Are
you.
y'all okay with about a 5-minute break?
If the decision.
It's
is overturned.
8:29. We'll meet back at,
8:35?
yeah, 8:35. Thank you.
the actual ordinance rezoning the property from A1 to PUD and the details of the development plan. Would that? I'm sorry? Correct. Correct.
And that would, under Amelia's motion, that would have to come back at the next city council meeting?
Correct, which would be June 14th.
And I'm gonna give you, anybody else in the room, a chance also, if we get a second, before we vote.
So are there amendments to that, or as far as the road belonging to the city, anything else that we discussed?
I think whatever with the chickens and the, maintaining.
Hey, turn your microphone on for Mark.
Sorry, Mark. And the maintenance of the right-of-way of the drive, I think could be included. Is that something that can be included, Patsy? Where are you? Hi. I'm sorry. Can that be included on the attachment to the ordinance? Get, chickens, maintaining the right-of-way of the drive? I mean, the. Where the POA has to maintain the right-of-way. Okay, no, I meant the drive that's going up to the subdivision. Is that something? That's considered part of the access drive. Oh, okay.
It's the same.
Okay.
It's all the same street.
Okay, so just with the chickens then. Anything else that the. And then we would.
I think we've got an extra week.
And then we'll have to vote on that, whether we approve that or not at that time. That.
So the next council meeting will be in 3 weeks.
June 14th.
So then what's that, whatever is presented. And I've met with both sides, and wonderful people, both sides. And there is a big drainage problem, but I feel like we have two separate issues here. We have a massive drainage issue that really has nothing to do with the development, and that is the conclusion that I've come to. And so in my mind, I'm keeping those two things separate, and then looking at everything else, I can see where, chickens and animals and things like that would, be an issue, so.
Okay, there's a motion on the table.
I'll second that motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion in 2 seconds. And we certainly owe it to those who are here that are in opposition of this development to give you an opportunity to speak. You can speak tonight, or you can speak when the ordinance is brought back and we have more detail. I'll leave that up to you. Or you can speak both times. If the motion carries, if it comes back. If it doesn't, if y'all have anything to say before we vote on this, well, then you're welcome to. Okay. Let's go ahead and get on the mic, please. I think they're all.
Please make sure your microphone's on.
And if you could state your
yes,
name and
that-
address.
yeah, that
If
only
you could
one.
state
Yeah.
your name and address, please.
Okay.
Yeah, we need a name and address also.
Okay, my name is Anton Myers. We live at 12827 South Zion. I have the northern property that goes from basically their street up to there. It goes back to the east. They talk about this 1/8-inch water deal. They must do it when there's a drought that goes on and we get a 1/16 of an inch of rain. If you notice in that quadrant there, it'd be the right-hand upper corner. You see there's kind of a little circle right there. That's my pond. And if you and their south property line right there
that's actually, they say, well, there's no water comes down that direction. There's actually a property that have slopes from that street that they're proposing to their property line and down into my property. I've had as much as 6 inches of water coming into my pond with a 3-inch rain. Now, where in the hell does a 1/8 inch of runoff come from? If I had just got an 1/8 of an inch runoff, we wouldn't be having this discussion. And what it does, it picks up. If you notice your topography there, you can see it slants basically from their road, proposed road, toward my pond. All that water coming off that hill, and it comes from basically the middle of their property. It slopes that direction, and the lines show it. And all that water runs that direction. It goes through my pond, floods out my pond, and then it goes on around. All that water goes on around between my shop, and I got a small barn back there. And I've seen as much as, when it gets to my corner of my property where their street comes, and it's right where their street comes to your street, there's as much as 2 feet of water comes through my property. And this is where, with Todd talking about, I've seen 3 feet of water going across the road. It's not coming from Lowell. It's not coming from a subdivision. It's coming from my property. They kind of leave that, they kind of take stuff out of context. That little bit right there does, where they're talking about does come from Lowell. But he didn't bother to show you where the water's coming from my side of the street. So, they need to figure out some drainage problems around here, folks. And the city better, I don't know, who's responsible for this if they do this, and my property gets flooded even worse than what it is now? Mm-hmm. Who's responsible? Who do I call?
Well, if we have drainage studies showing that we've approved, then that's, that's it.
Thing about it is, we've lived there now 4 years. Every year, this time of year, the first year we were here, in 10 hours time, we got 11 inches of rain.
Yeah, I just want to be clear on something, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but when we're talking about this 1/8 inch, what you get now doesn't really, what you get now is what it is.
Yeah, I realize that too.
The 1/8 inch is what they're proposing would be added to what you get now. That doesn't sound like the comment you were making.
Yeah. Well,
the 1/8 inch would be what would be proposed to be added with all that hard surface and no mitigation.
But I know what comes off my house. I've only got a 2,600 square foot house, and I know what my downspouts look like when I get these big rains like this. You get a column of water coming out like that right there. That's not an 1/8 of an inch of rain.
No, but that's the difference between concentrated flow and sheet flow. Also.
I know, but when you're concentrating that much into that whole corner right there, that's going to be more than an 1/8 of an inch.
Okay.
But anyway.
Well, I'm sure not going to argue that because I'm not an engineer by any means.
I understand that, the water's already coming from there to start with, but I can't take any more.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
My name's Jeff Wolf. I live at 8899 East Brown Road, which is the properties in the middle of the subdivision, which my house would be directly behind to the north. And I too have, and I spoke this to the planning meeting last time, I do have an issue with runoff. I was there probably for more than most of these people have been. 22 years I've lived there. There's not ever been the water problem, and I'm repeating myself, but there's not ever been the water problem like I'm seeing now. And I know the guys say, we've done all the engineering, I get it, it's all estimations, all based on 100-year rains. Well, we're getting rains like we've never seen before. We're seeing flooding like we've never seen before. I think the city can recognize that in some of their areas that are problematic. Ours happens to be one of those areas. And I know the engineering's been done, but I think we're seeing engineering failures across the road. That engineering got done. Lowell was responsible for engineering those subdivisions right down the road that's directly affecting our city, your city. Did we not work together with the Lowell engineers? Are that the same ones that approved that? Or did they just approve it and push water onto you guys that they're not supposed to be doing? Because that's exactly what happened. And that's what's happening right now. And I have a tremendous amount of water coming off this hill with no structure, no hard surfaces back there. And the water going across from Springdale into Lowell, across East Brown Road, which is our city, is incredible. Coming off my property, not his, not Todd's, it's coming off mine, and I got a small 1,800 square foot home. And it's not coming from our neighbors, it's coming directly off that hill, comes up the back of my French drain, is overwhelmed, goes across the side of my house to the north, and it's like a huge river. The people have been out there seeing it. And those are just from the rains we've had the last 4 or 5 years. But again, we're seeing the engineering failures.
But
From
there's
previous
been no,
subdivisions.
but there's been no engineering on this property.
Well, I'm talking about what's happening to Todd's property, what's happening to the front of my property.
Right.
From the subdivisions that in my opinion have been put in,
Mhm.
that water got pushed on to us now because that's a huge problem in that area. How did that happen? Those subdivisions got approved. They've got curbing, they've got guttering, they've got all the proper things. And all they did was move that water to us. So now it becomes our problem, and it is our problem. No one's addressed that. And all we're gonna do is compound the problem by putting more roofs, more hard surfaces to an area that is already overwhelmed with a tremendous amount of water. We've all seen the pictures. We've all seen the erosion. I don't know how many times Todd's fixed his driveway. I don't know how many times they had to come clean out the front of my front yard that I've got a ditch. It's probably 18 to 24 inches I'd never had before. My whistle on my driveway is overwhelmed. When it gets overwhelmed, it runs over the driveway and causes and that's the city. This is the city of Springdale. And this is not Lowell. The water's coming from that side. It's also coming from Lowell as well. I see, and it comes together and meets right there at Todd's driveway. That never happened before. I know these guys are talking about, it's only 1/8 inch more, that it's not a huge issue. It is a huge issue because it's happened in Lowell. It's happening in Springdale's allowing it to happen, and it's all coming our way. And we all get to share in that, the fixing the driveways, there's tremendous amount of erosion, and now you're telling me I get to rely on rain barrels to keep my house from flooding? Is anybody here in Springdale rely on rain barrels to catch their neighbor's water? Like those are gonna get addressed? And who's gonna check those to make sure that they're not gonna run over, tip over, have holes in them? I don't think anybody here has the time or the effort to maintain rain barrels to mitigate this extra water. Sir, I have a question. So when I met with these folks, they had said that really it all started in 2017, correct me if I'm wrong, with the paving of the road by Springdale. Is that correct? That is what you told me? I never once heard any mention of subdivisions being the cause, but it was the paving of the road. Yes, you bet.
Please go to the mic.
Thank you.
My name is Todd Stevens, and I live at 706 Paradise Place, just across the street, basically, from the proposed. So, Amelia, to address what your question was, I feel like that was answered to you based on the time frame of when the road was put in, not that being the result of why the flooding was. I remember thinking about, that would have been around that same time, around 2017 or so.
So the subdivisions that you're referring to were also put in at that same time?
Approximately, yeah. They have been under construction for a number of years around that time frame, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Thank you for clarifying.
does that clarify?
It does.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. Wow, it is late, and I have about 15 pages of material that we will not cover, I promise.
Okay. Yeah, you're gonna get another run at this, so, yeah. If the council sends it back.
Absolutely. So if I may, let me change up my information here just a little bit and focus primarily on the drainage piece, because I think that's
that is the primary heated discussion. We could talk appropriateness, and I think that I'm going to waste my breath in y'all's time because I don't hear anybody on the council objecting to the plans, I don't believe, as far as the dwellings themselves go. I will continue to address that, but I'm not going to address that tonight. Fair? The drainage piece of this, I will come back and also address one thing that you all have said there a while ago too. And my statement originally in the planning commission meeting was, and I agree with you, I'm not saying, everybody, that all that water is coming from across the street. It's truly not. But what it is an accumulation of water that all collects at that one point. And so I'm not an engineer, and I am way open to criticism here, and I'm way open to correction. Let me put it that way. But when we start talking about drainage there, for example, the calculations used a floor area of 1,719 square feet per lot, which is the average size of home expected to be built. While an increase of nearly 6 cubic feet per second in the 1% event may seem substantial, it should be considered that the flow path is approximately 640 feet wide. At this width, an increase of 5.86 cubic feet per second is calculated to raise the water level by approximately 1/8 of an inch. We've gone through all of that. This very small increase should not pose a risk. I think that Amelia, you're basing some of your thoughts on that, and I understand that. But I also feel like overall we need to be basing it on accuracy of reporting to us. And I hope that that is something that is a major concern and factor of yours, that the information you're being provided is accurate. Can I refer you over to page 111 on your exhibit? I think it's shown exhibit 1.48. And this has been brought up again. In fact, it may be the one that actually is on the screen. It's hard for me to see that from here. But this is a topo map, and everybody has been looking here at the property itself. I want to direct your attention now. Go to the entrance of the subdivision. Everybody follow me here. That's Brown Road right there. And just left of the entrance there is this, I don't know, like a Nemo type structure that you see there. And just left of that is basically the driveway. Those of you who came out, thank you for coming and looking at this. We sincerely appreciate that. But everybody that was there addressed the idea that that is a funnel right there. In other words, all, using my stupid Nemo analogy, who was it, Finn, said all drains lead to the ocean. All areas lead to that point right there. I brought my trusty farm funnel here. When the topography of a tunnel is in question, I question the significance of the width of flow path. Everybody keeps talking about this is spread out over 600 and something feet. It is, and it rolls down the hill at the Wolf's place, and all along there, 640 feet wide. But if I put a gallon of water right here on this funnel, and I spread it out over this area right here, where is all of that water going to come out? It comes out the bottom. It's a funnel. And for those of you that have seen that, you agree and you understand what I'm talking about. Do you know where my driveway is? My driveway's right there. I took some time. Once again, I'm not a hydro engineer. I'm a farm guy that understands gallons a whole lot better than cubic feet per second. And so I did a little research. The measurement cubic foot per second is the rate of water movement representing a volume of 1 cubic foot passing a given point during 1 second. That's a 12 by 12 by 12 block of water that goes by a spot in 1 second. The measurement is equivalent to approximately 7.48 gallons. So if I had a 12 by 12 by 12, I could put 7.48 gallons in that block. That works out to 448.8 gallons per minute. Chase me back over to page 94, if you would, please, in your exhibit. Table 1 is the top one. It's the north subbasin, assuming average development. The way this is broken out is that there is a 2-year to 100-year event on the left-hand column. And of course, the right-hand column is the increase in cubic foot per second, correct? To quantify that, this is 29.77 gallons per second, or 1,786 gallons per minute, assuming the best case scenario. And it's 54.75 gallons per second, or 3,285 gallons per minute, assuming the worst case scenario of, as it's shown in this chart, 7.32 cubic foot per second. That's the number of gallons of water that we're talking about. Page 95 says it's the owner's intent to install rain barrels on each house to capture rainwater, which should have the effect of reducing runoff slightly. Jeff, to quantify what you're talking about there just a little bit, assuming the best case scenario, 29.77 gallons per second, that means that every 1.85 seconds a 55-gallon rain barrel is going to fill on average. 1,001, 1,000, full. 1,001, 1,000, full. There's 2. How many rain barrels are we talking about here? And we're looking at, I'm sorry, are you looking at the 100-year event, the 1%? To get the 7.32 increase cubic foot per second? Assuming the best case scenario, that is the 3.98. Okay. And Amelia, where I got my math is if you will take 3.98 multiplied by 7.48, okay? That will fill a rain barrel that's 55 gallons in 1.85 seconds.
Let me make sure I'm following you, because
Yes,
I don't want to, I want to be clear on what you're saying.
Sure.
You've got a guttering.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? 3 by 4 guttering. And you're saying that guttering will fill up a rain barrel in a 55-gallon rain barrel in 1.5 seconds?
On average, at that cubic foot per second.
I don't believe there's any way. I don't believe there's any way that guttering can carry that much water.
Correct.
You're talking about a 55-gallon barrel.
Over the span of 1.5
seconds.
Over this, I'm saying that that is the equivalent of that amount of water.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And again, I know I'm oversimplifying here, and I understand that.
I'm oversimplifying, so
Well.
that's fine. That probably works fine for me.
Well, the point being there, you need to understand the volume of water that we're talking about. The volume of water that is represented by these cubic foot per second, is a massive amount of water. That will end up in the pool spot, which is the spot that's already which is right here. flooding. Mhm. So when I quantify that and I look at that as a number of gallons per water, number of gallons of water, that's a substantial amount of water that we're talking about. When we talk about, let's assume that that is correct, that it's 1/8 of an inch over 640 feet wide. That's a lot of water that we're adding to my funnel. If that water were to go ahead and disperse straight ahead, then I could agree with the calculation. But it doesn't. It falls into the funnel. All of it does. And it all comes to that one point right there. So, am I saying that all of the water at the funnel tip comes from this development? No, not at all. But I can't take any more water. Y'all have seen the pictures. Let's pretend that a development in an area that is at 100% capacity is not washing away, correct? Where's my capacity? I'm at about 150% because it washes away every time it comes about a 3-inch rain. And it does every single time. Believe me, I'm down there 2 and 3 times a year now fixing it before we ever put any houses over here.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir,
And I hope
please.
I've got the right house, because I've been out there and looked at everything too.
Yeah, Doug.
You live across the street,
Mhm.
and you have the driveway with a whistle in it, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Was that whistle sized while you owned the property and did you build the driveway?
No, the driveway has been there for many,
'Cause
many, many
just
years.
looking at it, and again, I'm no engineer, it looks to me like that whistle, besides being way off the road, it's pretty well undersized if it's carrying the water if y'all are carrying the water you're talking about. And it seems to me that whistle, not being an adequate size, would back up water back to the east.
Yeah. And
Am
it
I
does.
correct on
Yeah,
that?
yes, sir, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay,
What happens there is the edge of that driveway becomes a dam
I got you.
because the whistle is inadequate there.
Okay.
Let me back up a little bit. I've owned the property for many, many years there. In fact, I used to have a corner post right there where that whistle basically comes out. It never flooded for years and years. I had a fence, I had animals there.
Yeah.
And after development, like we were talking about, there is where that begins to create major flooding right there. And so, yes. Another concern is, when are we going to know? In our discussion all along, we've been talking about moving houses in that we don't know exactly what the square footage is going to be. When will we know that? Because that makes a drastic difference in the runoff. And where I can find that is the difference between, for example, 7.32 on chart number 1. And if you flip over to page 95, it goes to 15.45.
My understanding is, and I don't need to speak for the engineer.
Yep.
But my understanding is that the worst case roof area was factored into that 1/8 inch.
Yeah.
Additional 1/8 inch.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Without the rain barriers.
Right. That was my understanding too. Yep. So
And not only the roof area, but potential more added to it. So we're talking instead of 4,000, is it 8,000? Is that what you said, David? Up to 8,000?
We have submitted two drainage reports on this. The first one, which I believe is the one Mr. Stevens is referring to, did mention a house size of about 1,700 square feet, which was what was shown on the original preliminary plat. I went back and looked at it and said, well, we've got houses that could be potentially much larger once we settled on a square footage limitation, and also the size of the outbuildings. So the second preliminary drainage report considers that on every lot, there was a 4,000 square foot house built, and on every lot, a 4,000 square foot accessory building was built, and on some of the lots that have that provision in the development plan, another 4,000 square foot building was built. So what we're assuming is that every square foot allowable in this development was constructed at maximum size, and that's what we presented as the worst case scenario. We're talking about calculations here that are so minute and so precise that when we ran the initial drainage study, the increase that we anticipated was 1/100th of 1 foot, which is about 1/8 of an inch. And you understand rounding errors, okay? If it's 8 1/1000ths of a foot, that's considered 1/100th because the software doesn't get any more accurate than that. If it's 14 thousandths of a foot, it comes out as 100th of a foot. It didn't change from when we did the first one until we did the second one. So we're working in calculation in increments that are so small that even tripling the roof area didn't affect it. So that's where that came from.
And so that 1/8 of an inch is worst case scenario based off of more data than what is actually being designed for this area. So basically my point is the water runoff, based on the calculations, more than likely is going to be less.
More than likely, it will be less, yes. We're trying to consider the worst-case scenario here so that we can make sure that everybody's safe and protected. Again, initially, our pre-development calculations show that the runoff from the site spread out over 640 feet of width. And that's calculated as it leaves the property. I understand that it goes down places and then it converges, and we've got off-site runoff coming from the east, and we've got off-site runoff coming from Lowell. And I'm kind of intrigued by the idea that we had one gentleman state that water hops the street and goes from south to north, and another one said it hops the street and goes from north to south. Obviously, those can't both be true. I'd be interested to know which it is. Goes both ways at the same time. Okay, so it's flooding the whole street. It's not necessarily hopping the street. You've got almost equal contributions going from both sides, and that can happen. We see that. That's an indication that the drainage system already has issues. It doesn't reflect on what this property is going to do. And frankly, if the water in a 3-inch rain is covering the entire roadway, now we're talking a matter of degree. If we increase it by a little bit, that's not going to make any difference because it's already flooding out. I would like to point out, and I wish I could point to the screen here, but if you look at this topographical map, you see kind of the V shape on the north side of the road. That's taking water all the way from over, I don't remember what it's called in Lowell and Rogers, it's called Bellevue Road. It's way over there somewhere. There are 3 subdivisions that have been built in that area since 2001. One off Billy Acres Road was started in 2001. The one off Barrett Place was started in 2003. Those both contribute runoff to this area. There are about 8 to 10 houses apiece. I didn't see any detention on them. The larger one off Sandpiper
was begun in '06. Obviously, they didn't build any houses in it for a long time between '08 and whenever that picked back up. But that one has detention, a very large, obvious detention basin on it. So, the idea that, again, I think we're looking at different things. In any case, leaving the site, not where it winds up downstream, but leaving the site in its current condition, it shows that at 640 feet wide, the depth of flow is 4/100ths of 1 foot, or half an inch. That's math. I can't make that up. That is what it is. In the post-developed worst-case condition, the last one that we mentioned, that increases from 4/100ths of a foot to 5/100ths of a foot, or from about half an inch to about 6/10ths of an inch. It's about 1/8 of an inch of depth when we calculate it. In the worst-case scenario.
Thanks for that clarification, Dave. So, we're talking about water going on the road. Are the drainage tiles underneath the driveways, are they full? Are they clean?
Are you talking about down Brown Road?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe it's Mr. Wolf's property and Mr. Beaver's property.
I think it was, well, part of Brown Road was later than that. When we paved it.
Until, I believe, 2 years ago, we had this, maybe a year ago, we had 5, 6, 7, 8 inch rain. It was in the winter time, fall, winter. Then you guys came out with the flat bucket and finally cleaned the ditches out. The road graders had pushed the whistles in, they came with backhoes, peeled them up. So as far as the size of the whistles go, that was county stuff years ago. The only thing that's been taken care of on East Brown Road is just pavement. Drainage really hasn't been addressed at all, except for more water coming.
Good. Is that good? Good. Go to page 94 with me, please.
And you mentioned somebody said that the whistles were too small.
Yes.
Who was that? Was that the city of Springdale? Street Department? that
I
came
just
out?
asked the
Yeah,
question.
Mayor was
Well,
asking.
no, when I was
And
over
you
there, when I
agreed.
was with
Yeah.
you the other night,
Okay.
you said that
Yeah.
you were told by somebody that the whistles were too small all along that area. Who
Yeah,
told
that.
you guys that?
I flagged down a City of Springdale worker
Okay,
and addressed the issue with him.
okay,
And he, I want to say his name was Charles, don't quote me on that, but he said he would have his boss come out and look at it, that the whistles were undersized and not maintained.
thank you.
Are you referring now to along Brown Road? Yes.
And are you talking about on the Lowell side or on the Springdale side?
On the Springdale side.
James, are you aware of that at all? Okay, James is our Public Works Director. Would you mind taking a look at those? Just having your guys look at them and see if there's any maintenance that we need to be doing to help that flow better? Thank you.
One that goes under Brown Road is on Springdale side. It's fairly large, but it gets overwhelmed in any 2, 3, 4 inch rain. And then what that does, the water's coming on Springdale side, across my driveway, across the front of my property, and there's a big drain. Welcome to the west side of my property line that goes underneath East Brown Road. That gets overwhelmed immediately.
Yeah. And also, while we're addressing that, if I may, Charles. James, I'm sorry. Where we're talking about, and I'll show you some photos here in just a moment. The city of Springdale has come in and put massive amounts of riprap concrete to secure your street right there. And
right where a mailbox used to be, et cetera. And so you'll see where I'm talking about right along there where that maintenance has been done. If you don't get out there quickly, you're going to lose part of your street again on down the way, because I think, Amelia, I showed that to you. Somebody needs to do something right there because that whole area is going to wash away. At least be concerned for your street, and because it is about to overflow right there. Reference page 94 with me, please. The 1% event is not nearly 6 cubic foot per second. I'm going to the second sentence here. It says, while an increase of nearly 6 cubic foot per second in the 1% event may seem substantial, etc. I'm not following that. At this width, an increase of 5.86 cubic feet per second is calculated. I'm not following that number. Actually, an increase of nearly, I don't understand where 6 cubic feet per second equals 7.32 there for the maximum. While an increase of nearly 6 cubic feet per second, nowhere is that referenced in the material. On that same page, it says, at this width, an increase of 5.86 cubic feet per second is calculated to raise the water level by approximately 1/8 of an inch. We've talked about that until we're all tired of hearing that. Now, would you go to page 95 for me? About halfway down on the last paragraph. It says, assuming maximum allowable lot coverage yields an increase in peak runoff in the north of 15.45% cubic feet per second in the 1% event. While this increase may seem substantial, it should be considered the flow path is approximately 640 feet wide. Here it is again. At this width, an increase of 15.45 cubic feet per second is calculated to raise the water level by approximately 1/8 of an inch. What is it? I'm understanding 15.45. Is it 15.45? Is it 5.86? Is it 6 cubic feet per second? Yep. I mean, please, this is what I mean by the accuracy that we're all making decisions on here, and maybe I'm misunderstanding.
This is as I discussed with you before. The difference, if you're talking about 6 cubic feet per second or 16 cubic feet per second spread out over 640 feet, is still about 1/8 of an inch. Now, one might be 3/32 of an inch and one might be 5/32 of an inch. We can't get that accurate. We're talking about minute fractions of an inch, and the software just doesn't go any farther down than that. So I don't know if it's one's 3/32 and one's 5/32, but in any case, it winds up being about 1/8 of an inch. I realize, and I triple checked when I got the same answer both times and looked at it, because, you know, it doesn't make much sense until you study it and you look at it. So in comparing two different drainage reports calculated for two different roof areas, yes, we have the same answer. And I know that looks funny, but again, we're talking about an increase that is so small that the rounding errors get us, and it comes out to 1/100th of 1 foot. Again, 0.006 is 1/100th. 0.014 is 1/100th, because the software only goes to 100th of a foot. It doesn't go to 1,000th of a foot. So that's the answer that we get every time we reran it to make sure. And that's the best I can explain that.
So I don't care if it's 1/8 of an inch. I want to know how many gallons are coming. Here's where the confusion is, and this is a complicated process that I don't think any of us have a good understanding outside of educated people as yourself and how understanding water flow. So you mean to tell me that I could dump so many gallons in a spot, and it would be 1/8 of an inch as it comes down to my funnel. Or I could double the amount of water that I pour, and it'll still be 1/8 of an inch as it comes down my slope into my funnel.
If I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
If I'm understanding this right, and the 1/8 of an inch and the 640 feet, is that what it is? That's what it is as it leaves the property, the subject property. Is that correct, David? What happens after that is happening now. What happens after that is not, this 640 feet, 1/8 of an inch, it doesn't include your funnel. But you got a funnel now.
Mhm.
See what I'm saying? But they're not responsible to fix your funnel now.
Understand.
Okay.
And I'm not asking for that, by
They're
the way.
talking about what comes off of their property
Mhm.
as it, on the northern edge, off the northern edge of their property.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay.
That's what comes off the property.
That's where the 1/8 of an inch is, spread out over 640 feet.
Mhm. That dumps into our ditch that comes on to
Correct.
the discharge area there. I'm still not understanding. So let me use a simpleton's example. It rains 3 inches today. It's going to flow off of that no more than 1/8 of an inch deep, more than what it does right now, I'm understanding. Okay. If it rains 10 inches today, it still is going to sheet flow off of there at an additional 1/8 of an inch.
Well, that 1/8 of an inch is for a 100-year storm, correct?
Hmm.
So your difference between 3 inches and 10 inches,
Mhm.
the criteria for that runoff is a 100-year storm.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it can happen. It doesn't, we
Yeah.
know it doesn't wait 100 years.
That-
Yeah.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Okay. But the volume of water that we're talking about will substantially increase based on the roof size that is up there.
Well,
That's something my engineer's gonna have to answer. But I do know that, I do know that, I understand the reasoning for this small development for not wanting to disturb the property and concentrate the water rather than in sheet flowing like it is now and using low-impact development. So I get that part.
Yeah. Well, let me just conclude with something, and I'll share a little bit that makes me skeptical. My family farm is located immediately south. Does anybody know where AAO is in Rogers, the new sports facility, kind of down near Fast Lanes, as an example, down there off of that road there? So there's an AAO facility there in Rogers, and it was newly constructed. We were told that all is within acceptable sheet flow specs. I got overwhelmed, honestly confused. And today, our 50 by 100 shop sits there with 6 and 8 inches of water in it. That was approved by an engineering firm that supposedly was an expert and assured us that would not happen because of, guess what the word they used? Sheet flow. Last rain, my aunt had to go and buy a pump at Atwood's and pump water out from underneath her house to keep it out of her house as the result of sheet flow that was within an acceptable range by some engineer. There's a substantial lawsuit filed by the neighbors that will come to a head finally in 2023. And I would estimate that there's going to be more money spent defending it by them by that time that it's over than it would have cost to do it right on the beginning. And here's the haunting side note. AAO is in Rogers. Guess where my farm is? Lowell. Guess who's pointing fingers? I mean, here we are again. I can't get away from this. All the numbers sounded good. All the numbers sounded right. But I want to refer you now to pictures say 1,000 words here, you all. Go, please, if you would. To, I think it's 318. It's the very last page. Okay, I'm going to end right here. I know everybody's tired.
Close to the end.
It's right before the next resolution, the page right before. You can go to the bookmark for the next resolution.
Okay.
Go back one page. It's easier than scrolling through 300 pages.
Everybody with me? Okay, because I want to make this point.
Gotcha.
Note where the top picture is taken from is standing looking back down. I'm looking east down Brown Road. Okay. And my driveway, you can see it there in the far. Okay. This is flow that is coming from the south toward the north, the aftermath of that. We're talking about those are big rocks, folks. That didn't just, that's not 1/8 of an inch moving that. And that was just here back in the last rain. These are very current photographs. And I find the irony in this, and I had to smile. The last bottom picture there is a sign that was placed at the entrance of the subdivision directing Planning Commission and people, I don't know who all was coming over to visit with the property owners there. But that sign there indicated how to turn and where the driveway was, I'm assuming. The 8915 sign. And now where it is located is on the north side of Brown Road. Sitting in a puddle of water. Maybe the wind blew it over there. I don't know. But it took more than 1/8 of an inch or 1/2 of an inch, as an example, is what we're being told now as current. Plus we add another 1/8 of an inch on there. You need to be there in the rain.
So, Mr. Stevens, here,
Yes, sir.
clearly, we all realize there's a flooding issue out there, and we've gone over and over and over with it.
Yep.
I think you're kind of beating a dead horse now. So,
Exactly. Agreed.
however, you said something earlier, and I've got to vote tonight on whether we overturn this appeal. Besides whether we do tweaks, I got to vote tonight on whether we overturn the appeal. So I'm still looking at whether this is a good deal or not. And so that's why I am kind of interested in what you were going to skip over a while ago, and that is the appropriateness of these homes, which is a little unusual for the city of Springdale, just like rain barrels are unusual. This is kind of a new concept that they're proposing. So please be brief, because it's very late. And honestly, you're dragging it out. But if you could just briefly tell me why you think this project is inappropriate.
Sure. 2 to 3,000 square foot homes on 5 to 10 acre properties, estate properties, is what we're seeing out there right now that is in new construction. Hadn't been anything built out there a lot, but what has been built has been new construction, 2 to 3,000 square foot homes on 5 to 10 acre estate properties. That's not this at all. I will even refer back to the drainage report. The surrounding area is either underdeveloped or single homes on large tracts of land, is what the engineer has said. So they refer back to, we understand that's what's out there. Well, a subdivision of 8 tenant-occupied homes moved in from other locations, occupying a total of 9.65 acres, is counter to the appropriateness of the area
Why is that?
because it does not approximate what is being put there. There's a reason that these homes are being built out there on these estate properties. And it's because it is moving, especially on the Springdale and Lowell side, toward these larger estate pieces.
And when you say estate pieces, how big of tracts are you talking about?
Yeah. I'm going to say,
Larger than an acre?
yes, definitely. I'm going to say,
Well, you saw Mr. McCready, he had all those other properties to the south. It looked like it was pretty concentrated.
correct. Yeah, do me a favor if you would, Jeff, and I'll be totally brief here, I promise. Go to page 308 in your agenda for me. There's a chart here that talks about the average size of a larger area than what we're talking about, except for just adjacent properties here that touch this subdivision. We're talking here, my chart here shows 10.45 acres to be fair. There's a 112 acre farm that's in that. If I take that out, then I'm still at about 6.39 acres on average. And if I broke out the new construction pieces, we're looking at pretty sizable pieces of property, 5 acres on average.
All right.
Is that good? Okay. I rest.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I know it's getting late. We do have a motion and a second to, let me restate this, make sure we've got it right. To deny, or to overturn the denial of the planning commission, which would bring it back in ordinance form with whatever changes may be made to the next city council meeting, which is 3 weeks from tonight. City council meeting, 3 weeks from tonight, and then obviously we would go through this process, hopefully put it earlier in the agenda, and all those things, right? That is the motion, and it is properly made and seconded. I will give the council one more chance to ask any questions. If there are no more, I'll ask for the vote. Okay, Denise?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes.
Carry 6-2. So it will be back on there will be a rezoning ordinance, and the updated development plan will be on the June 14th city council agenda. And I would say, Mr. McCready, the sooner you can get that amended development plan in, the better, so for proper inspection and review by all parties.
Is there any more requirements of the developer to notify residents, or is this their notification?
This is their notification.
So the planning, or the city council agenda comes out, our deadline is
Thursday the 9th.
Thursday at noon, the Thursday before the Tuesday
The 9th.
committee has, council meeting. So, that should be on our website at that time. Is that the earliest they'll get to look at it as far as whatever changes are proposed?
Well, no, not technically. It depends on when they submit it. If someone does a FOIA request. So if we have it, then obviously we would make that available if we have it. So
Okay.
sooner the better.
Yeah, the sooner the better, and then if you all have questions, you can contact, would they contact planning, Patsy? Or would they contact Ernest?
This is going to be paid to you, to the mayor's office, or to my office, to revise plan?
I think to be consistent, it needs to go through the planning office. Because that's traditionally where zoning ordinances and development plans get filed. That, just to be consistent with that is what I would say.
We know where it's going.
Yeah, I just want y'all to know the possibilities of however you could see
Sure.
whatever changes are being proposed. Okay?
And hopefully,
But they would have to be available by the end of the day, Thursday, before the city council meeting in 3 weeks.
it should be the 9th.
Yeah, the 9th. Noon on Thursday is the deadline, but I'm saying, so we've not always met that deadline. So what I'm saying is, give us to the end of the day Thursday. There could be a glitch in our software, and there's all kinds of issues, so, but we will get you a copy of whatever is it, but it should be on our website by the end of the day, on that Thursday, the 9th. Okay. Moving on. Where is Scott?
Bless his
He still
heart.
here?
I
We did that just to punish you,
thought he
Scott.
left.
Can we table this to the next meeting?
Go ahead.
You have I guess you have in your package the resolution, so.
Yeah, I can read the
For,
title.
for Conair.
It's a resolution endorsing participation in the sales and use tax refund program authorized by the Consolidated Incentive Act of 2003 in Arkansas Code annotated section 15-4-2706D. This is for Conair.
Right, and
Move the resolution be adopted.
Second.
All right, motion and second. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes, ma'am.
Flores,
Yes, ma'am.
Freeman, Fugierus,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Carries 8-0.
Go ahead,
The
Ernest.
next item is a resolution setting a hearing date on petition to vacate a portion of Blair Street. There's a map, the portion of Blair Street between Johnson and Price was vacated in the early 90s, but the portion between Price and Huntsville has never been vacated, and the Methodist Church is wanting to develop that, so they're asking, they own the property on both sides, for that portion to be vacated, and this would set the public hearing for June
Move the
14th.
resolution be adopted.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second to approve the resolution. Roll call, please.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Watson, Flores,
Yes, ma'am.
Freeman,
Yes, ma'am.
Fugierus,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Carries 8-0.
I think item 20 made the agenda by mistake. I missed that as I looked at the agenda. I think we decided last time there's really no changes needed
Right.
for our committee meeting. It'll be the first Monday in June, just as it always is. Any other comments from council? Okay, I'm gonna take that as a no. City attorney?
At the risk of getting in trouble for making a comment after a long meeting, I just wanted to make the council aware. We've done several cleanup lien ordinances and a raise and removal lien ordinance for 1205 Crutcher, you may remember. We have been paid in full for all of those.
Good.
Just thought I wanted to make you aware.
Wow.
Great.
Okay.
I have no comments, so
So
I would
moved.
entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion, a second. We're adjourned. Thank you.